Are there any point of national, sorry, are there any notices of motions? Honorable Chidua.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I rise to give notice that on the 29th of July, that this House considers and adopts the report of the Portfolio Committee on Industry and Commerce on the sugar value chain in Zimbabwe. I so submit. I've got another one.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I give notice that on the 29th of July, that this House considers and adopts the report of the Portfolio Committee on Industry and Commerce on the fertilizer value chain. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chidua. Honorable Liwayo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give notice that on Wednesday, the 29th of July, 2026, I will move the motion standing in my name that this House adopts the 2025 fourth quarter budget performance report for the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, and the 2025 consolidated budget performance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Liwayo. Honorable Mutandiji.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon. I rise to give notice that on Thursday, 30 July 2026, I will move that this House take note of the report of the 7th session of Commission on the Status of Women held from 9 to 19 March 2026 at the United Nations headquarters, New York City, United States of America. I thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Honorable Ima Oneke on point of national interest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Good afternoon. I rise on a point of national interest to highlight a strategic trifecta of developments that occurred this week, signaling a transformative shift in our national economic trajectory, the synchronization of our admission into the BRICS New Development Bank, NDB, the resumption of direct flights to London, and the widespread reduction in airfares by major airlines marks a turning point for Zimbabwe's global competitiveness. Madam Speaker, ma'am, our entry into BRICS Bank is a game changer for infrastructure development. It provides Zimbabwe with access to development capital that is not tied to the restrictive conditions of traditional Western institutions. These funds are earmarked for the very infrastructure, that's energy, roads, and rail, that supports our burgeoning aviation and trade sectors. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the skies are opening for Zimbabwe. The resumption of the direct Harare-London route has been met with a significant market response, immediately causing most airlines to reduce their prices. Moreover, Madam Speaker, ma'am, re-establishing the direct link to the United Kingdom, a major global financial hub, simplifies trade and enhances the Zimbabwe's open for business mantra after a 16-year hiatus. Madam Speaker, ma'am, as if that is not enough, furthermore, the President, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, has with immediate effect removed all duplicative and unjustifiable access fees in the transport sector to reduce administrative and business costs. Kudos to Dr. Idi Mnangagwa. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the message is clear. Zimbabwe is becoming more integrated, more visible, more accessible, and more competitive. I urge this August House to support the continued liberalization of our skies and the deepening of our multilateral partnerships, as these are the engines that drive us forward. So I submit.
Thank you, Honorable Mawaneke. Honorable Nyandorobi.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today, the 28th of July 2026, is World Conservation Day. In that regard, Madam Speaker, I rise on a point of national interest to mark this day and to draw the attention of this House to the urgent need to strengthen environmental protection and sustainable management of our natural resources. While we commemorate this important day, we must acknowledge the growing environmental challenges confronting our nation. One of the most pressing concerns is the mushrooming of illegal dump sites in our towns, cities, and rural communities. Despite efforts by local authorities to improve waste management, including partnering with private sector players in refuse collection and recycling initiatives, illegal dumping continues to threaten public health, pollute our environment, and undermine the country's development aspirations. There is need, Madam Speaker, to strengthen enforcement measures. The Environmental Management Agency, EMA, should be adequately empowered with necessary legal authority, financial resources, and operational capacity to effectively deal with individuals and businesses that indiscriminately dump waste in undesignated areas. Stronger penalties and consistent enforcement will help deter would-be offenders to promote responsible waste disposals. Madam Speaker, responsible mining must remain a national priority. Mining activities continue to contribute significantly to our economy, but they must not come at the expense of the environment and the livelihoods of our communities. Some mining operations have left behind open pits, polluted rivers, and degraded lands due to poor environmental practices. Madam Speaker, there is also great concern regarding foreign-owned mining companies that have been accused of failing to adhere to environmental regulations and safe mining standards. It is imperative that all investors, regardless of their country of origin, fully comply with Zimbabwe's environmental laws to rehabilitate mined out areas and operate responsibly. No investor should be allowed to place profits above the protection of our environment and welfare of our people. As we observe the National Day, let us reaffirm our collective commitment to protecting our forests, rivers, wildlife, and natural resources for future generations. Environmental conservation is not the responsibility of government alone, but of every citizen, corporate entity, and institutions. I therefore urge the government to continue strengthening environmental governance, empower EMA, support local authorities in waste management, and ensure strict compliance with responsible and sustainable mining practices. I so submit, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Nyandoro. Honorable Murechu.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker.
Good afternoon.
I rise on a point of national interest on the profoundly devastating accident that led to the passing on of Highlanders Football Club executive officials and a staunch supporter who perished in a freak road carnage involving multiple cars along the Bulawayo-Harare highway on Wednesday, 22nd of July 2026. Horrifying to unprecedented levels is the fact that the accident was caused by a stray cow, something which could have easily been avoided had the owner of the beast taken care of his or her own animal before it ventured into the road, abruptly ending the lives of our dear people. Madam Speaker, ma'am, night driving is unavoidable. We can't ban it as a measure to reduce road traffic accidents by stray animals. It would be more like closing the toilet in order to stop diarrhea. neither can we cut down all the trees because a lot of people are committing suicide by hanging themselves on trees. In conveying my condolences to the bereaved families, Highlanders Football Club supporters, and the nation at large, I urge the law enforcement agency to rigorously enforce the provisions of legislation on animals and ensure the owner of this cow is liable under Exio D P2, Exio D Pauperi in terms of the common law. The provisions of the law are adequate to ensure that he or she faces the full wrath of the law. In this case, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the law is very clear. All stray animals must be impounded. All stray owners of the stray animals that cause accidents must be arrested and face the full wrath of the law. All people who steal road wires that are fencing our wires, our wires that are fencing our roads must be arrested. The penalties must serve as a stark reality that it is unlawful to let animals stray on the roads and cause unnecessary loss of lives. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I also want to express my deepest appreciation and gratitude to our kind and listening President who accorded the state assistance to the funerals of our departed football personalities. I thank him mostly, and in doing so, may the nation and the families of the deceased find solace and closure to this sad incident. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Murechu. Indeed, it's so sad. May their dear souls rest in eternal peace. Thank you. Honorable Bajela.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much for granting me this opportunity. I rise to draw the attention of this House to a public notice issued by the Office of the Master of the High Court calling for the finalization of deceased estates by the 31st of July 2026. While this initiative is commendable, the deadline is now not rapidly approaching, yet many Zimbabweans remain unaware of this important process. In both urban and rural communities, countless families still have unresolved deceased estates. Many beneficiaries do not know the legal procedure. Some lack the required documentation, while others have never received adequate information on what is expected of them. If the deadline expires without sufficient public awareness, vulnerable families may face unnecessary prejudice. Specifically, the Master of the High Court may evoke clauses that allow the appointment of executors outside family structures. The services of such executors may be unaffordable to many families. I therefore respectfully call upon the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs to cause a 90-day extension of the current deadline. Such an extension would not undermine the objectives of the Master of High Court. Rather, it would promote justice by ensuring that citizens are given a fair opportunity to comply. During this additional 90-day period, Madam Speaker, I further urge the Master of the Office of the Master of High Court to embark on a robust nationwide public awareness campaign using radio, television, newspapers, social media, community meetings, and traditional leadership structures. In addition, I request that the office conducts a dedicated workshop for members of Parliament so that as legislators we are adequately equipped to educate and assist constituents with matters relating to the administration and finalization of deceased estates. Our appreciation of the legal framework on administration of estates will help us advise our constituents properly whenever requests arise. Madam Speaker, access to justice depends not only on the law itself, but also on public knowledge of that law. Let us ensure that no Zimbabwean is left behind simply because they were not adequately informed. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Badila. Your message will be conveyed to the responsible minister. Thank you.
Privilege.
What is your point of privilege?
Maita basa mubato wechigaro. Mubato wechigaro tosvika pakati pegore sema MP enyu ari kumiririra vanhu. Hatisati tambonzwa ripoti yekomiti yewelfare yedu kuti yakamira sei. Pane zvinhu zvizhinji zvatakawirirana pabhajeti zvikapropozwa nema-MP enyu pakaapuruvwa mari dzikanzi dzaiswa asati aziva kuti pane here zviri kufamba nekuti zvimwe zvacho mubato wechigaro zviri kukanganisa basa redu zvakafanana nenyaya yekuti vanhu vakaenda kana mumapublic hearing ma-MP enyu haasi kuwana mari dzavanofanira kunge vachipiwa nenguva. Maalawenzi edu takapedzisira kupiwa egore rapera. Saka ichikumbirawo kuti vanoona nezvewelfare vambogarawo vozoudzawo ma-MP kuti nyaya dzewelfare yavo ma-MP dzakamira sei kuti tikwanise kuita basa redu nemazvo tiine zvikwanisiro zvakakwana. Maita basa.
Mazvita Honorable Amauswa, vanoona nezvazvo vachaziviswa, mugozoziviswa kana vagara pasi kuti vanenge vataurirana zvipi kusvika papi. Tinotenda. Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I move that orders number 1 to 10 be stood over until order number 11 and 12 has been disposed of in that order. I thank you.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Notice of motion number 11, Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, ma'am. On November 5, 2022, Chinese President proposed the establishment of the International Mangrove Center in Shenzhen, People's Republic of China, during the 14th meeting of the Conference of the Constructing Parties to the Ramsar Convention, COP14. On September 6, 2023, the 62nd Standing Committee meeting of the Ramsar Convention approved the regional initiative jointly proposed by the governments of China, Madagascar, and Cambodia to establish the International Mangrove Center in Shenzhen. On November 6, 2024, the signing ceremony for the establishment agreement of the International Mangrove Center was held in Shenzhen. Representatives from 18 countries as the first batch of member states formally signed the agreement and unveiled the plaque marking the official establishment of the IMC. While Zimbabwe does not have mangroves, which are one of a form of wetlands, we do have various types of wetlands. Further, the ecological principles are the same for mangroves and for wetlands. The IMC is part of the regional centers of excellency recommended by the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, just like the Southern Africa Ramsar regional initiatives, which we have in the Southern region. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the mission of the IMC is to promote international cooperation and joint actions in mangrove preservation, restoration, and wise and sustainable use, strengthen the implementation of the Convention and other relevant current and future environmental commitments, including but not least limited to the Cunningham-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Paris Agreement, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, along with its Sustainable Development Goals. Madam Speaker, the objectives of the agreement are to A, promote knowledge sharing and strengthen joint research cooperation on mangrove conservation, restoration, wise and sustainable use. B, enhance technology transfer and scientific and technical cooperation and training on mangrove conservation, restoration, wise and sustainable use. C, develop educational, information, communication and public awareness mechanisms on mangroves and adjacent wetlands. And D, build and enhance capacity and conduct pilot projects on priorities for mangrove conservation, restoration, wise and sustainable use. Madam Speaker, the financing of the IMC shall depend on voluntary contributions from the host country and other member states, as well as funds from other channels. The Council shall adopt an annual baseline budget to cover the core staffing and operational costs of the Secretariat. This baseline operational fund shall be provided by the host country. A special fund shall be established exclusively for the mobilizing resources to support IMC pilot projects in mangrove conservation and restoration. This special fund shall be managed by an independent committee comprised of major donors. Project proposals shall be reviewed and evaluated by the Secretariat and be recommended to the special fund for consideration upon Council approval. Madam Speaker, this MOU signed between Zimbabwe and China is expected to bring several benefits, including A, strengthening wetland conservation initiatives, enhancing efforts to protect and restore wetlands ecosystem. B, technical and academic exchange programs, facilitating knowledge sharing and capacity building. C, joint research opportunities, collaborating on studies related to forestry, grasslands, and wetland management. D, retooling with state-of-the-art research equipment and capacity development support, upgrading research facilities and training personnel. E, deepen our understanding of mangrove ecosystems and their contribution to global environmental health. Foster international cooperation and knowledge sharing on mangrove conservation, thereby advancing our shared goals. Madam Speaker, the key provisions of the agreement are summarized as follows. Article 1 provides the establishment of the International Mangrove Center. The IMC shall operate as an independent, non-profit and intergovernmental international organization, serving as an ecosystem-based responsible research and innovation to the Convention on Wetlands. Article 2 indicates that the headquarters of the IMC, with a secretariat as the executing body, shall be located in Shenzhen, the People's Republic of China. Article 3 provides the mission and objective of the institution, of the center, to promote international cooperation and joint actions in mangrove conservation, restoration, and wise use and Sustainable Use strengthen the implementation of the Convention on Wetlands and other relevant current and future environmental commitments, including but not limited to the Cunningham-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Paris Agreement, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals. Article 4 outlines membership of member states, observers, and withdrawals. Membership is open to convention parties and other interested states. Admission occurs through signature or accession and is provided by silent assent. Each member state shall appoint a focal point person. The council may suspend or expel members that fail to comply with the charter or the obligations of the center. Observers will be from eligible organizations, institutions, private entities, and indigenous and local communities engaged in mangrove conservation and sustainable use. Member states and observers may withdraw by written notice, effective 6 months after notification, without affecting prior obligations. Article 5 outlines that the IMC governance consists of 2 bodies, which are the Council and the IMC Secretariat, each which is headed by a Director General. Article 6 outlines that the Council is the governing and decision-making body of the IMC and shall be composed of member states, with each member state designating 1 delegate. The Council holds regular plenary sessions and many may convene interim meetings as needed. Article 7 outlines that the Secretariat is located in Shenzhen, the Republic of China, and shall be the executing body responsible for daily operations of the IMC under the authority and guidance of the Council. Article 8 outlines that the financing of the IMC shall depend on voluntary contributions from the host country and other member states, as well as funds from other channels. Article 9 stipulates that the working languages of the IMC shall be Chinese and English. All official documents shall be available in both languages. Interpretation shall be provided at regular council sessions unless an alternative arrangement is agreed upon. Article 10, the IMC shall possess legal personality in all member states, and in particular, the capacity to enter into contracts, acquire and dispose of movable and immovable property, and initiate legal proceedings. Article 11 outlines that the privileges, immunities, and facilities accorded to the IMC within the host country and other member states shall be agreed upon in separate documents. Article 12 outlines the cooperation with member states, international organizations, and other stakeholders. The IMC shall collaborate closely with all member states and as deemed appropriate under the terms of this agreement with other international organizations responsible research and innovation, academia, the private sector, civil society organization, indigenous peoples, and local communities and other relevant stakeholders. Article 13 stipulates that the host country government is invited to establish an interim secretariat. The interim secretariat shall, prior to the formal entry into force of this agreement, undertake all functions of the secretariat of the IMC. Article 40 provides settlement of disputes whereby all disagreements arising from the interpretation or implementation of this agreement shall be settled in the spirit of amicable cooperation and through friendly consultations. Article 15 provides the amendments by member states at least 6 months prior to a council session. Proposed amendments shall be communicated to the chair of the council through secretariat, which shall then circulate them to all member states at least 4 months before the session of the council consideration, for council consideration. Article 16 outlines the entry into force of this agreement subject to ratification, acceptance, and approval by signatory states. Madam Speaker, following the extraordinary success of the Convention on Wetlands COP15 in Victoria Falls and the taking over of the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands presidency during the next 3 coming years, Zimbabwe needs to add to the growing momentum for wetland action by highlighting the importance of the urgent need to accelerate investment in protecting, restoring, and wisely use the world wetlands. The country can achieve this faster through partnerships like the joining of the IMC. I thank you, Madam. I so present.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question before the House is a motion by the Honorable Minister of Environment, Climate and Wildlife as set forth on pages 2091 and 2092 of today's order paper. Is there any debate?
Point of privilege, Madam Speaker.
Point of privilege, Honorable Lawrence.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think agreement yauya na Honorable Minister enda kuti ratify mnomo. Haina uzenge yamboenda kuti tiitirwe workshop tizive kuti ndezvei. SPA ruling yakaitwa naSpeaker kuti matitizi ese nema-agreements tinofana kuitwa workshop. Vanhu voziva vozoya vachi debate mnomo. So asati yaitaitirwa izvozvo. Yangopinda izvozvo.
Thank you. Clerk. Thank you, Honorable Murombezi. We will adjourn the debate to allow the honorable members to attend the workshop. Then we will debate it later. Thank you. Honorable Minister, please may you attend the debate.
Madam Speaker, I propose that we attend the debate. I thank you.
has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned to what day, Honorable Minister? Honorable Minister.
Tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Notice of motion number 12, Honorable Minister. Notice of motion number 12.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I again stand here to present to you. It is an honor to move the motion for the ratification of this agreement before this House. The agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas was adopted on the 19th of June 2023. Zimbabwe signed the agreement on 5th March 2025. UNCLOS is the regulatory framework for the environmental protection of the oceans. However, parties to the UNCLOS had identified a gap in the convention, being that there were no provisions governing...
Honorable Minister. Please, may you approach the clerk's table. You may proceed, Honorable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I move that whereas Section 327A 2A of the Constitution of Zimbabwe provides that any international treaty which has been concluded or executed by the President's authority does not bind Zimbabwe until it has been approved by Parliament. Whereas Zimbabwe signed the agreement under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, on the Convention and Sustainable Use of Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement on the 5th of March 2025. Whereas the agreement entered into force on the 17th of January 2026, 120 days after the deposit of instruments of ratification by 60 states and whereas to date, 88 states have ratified the agreement. Now, therefore, in terms of Section 327(2)(a) of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, this House resolves that the aforesaid agreement be and is hereby approved for ratification. I so submit.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question before the House is a motion by the Honorable Minister of Environment, Climate and Wildlife as set forth on page 2092 of today's order paper. Is there any debate? Honorable Minister, may you please adjourn the debate?
Suggest the debate tomorrow. I so submit.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned to what day, Honorable Minister?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that orders number 13 to order number 18 be stood off until order number 19 has been disposed of. I thank you.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
Notice of motion number 19, Honorable Karikoga.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker.
Good afternoon.
I move the motion in my name as the order paper.
Thank you. Who seconds?
I second, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Karikoga.
Thank you. I represent the report of the 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union and related meetings held in Istanbul, in Turkey, from the 18th to the 23rd of October 2025. The 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, IPU, and related meetings was convened from the 14th to the 19th of April 2026 in the magnificent and historic city of Istanbul in Turkey under the apt theme nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations. Against the backdrop of unfolding geopolitical tensions and ongoing wars globally, but particularly in the Middle East, that have been undermining humanitarian conservancies, this statutory assembly offered a unique opportunity for participating lawmakers to pronounce themselves eloquently in advancing peaceful solutions to global war conflicts and within the auspices of parliamentary diplomacy. The Parliament of Zimbabwe was ably led by Honorable Advocate Jacob Francis Zwidamilimo Mudenda, Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Mabel Memory Chinomona, President of the Senate, was also in attendance. They were also accompanied by the following members of Parliament. One, Chief Mushane Lucas Kumalo, member of the IPU Standing Committee on Sustainable Development. Honorable Tsitsi Veronica Muzenda, member of the IPU Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights and Forum of Women Parliamentarians. The third one was Honorable Sengezo Chabangu, member of the IPU Health Committee, and the IPU Standing Committee on Sustainable Development. Honorable Lusiomo Nyelele, member of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians and the IPU Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs. Honorable Maureen Kademaunga, member of the Working Group on Science and Technology, the Forum for Young Parliamentarians and
May the honorable member be heard in silence.
And the IPU Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs. Honorable Jonah Nyelele was also in attendance, member of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians and IPU Standing Committee on Peace and International Security. And Honorable Tawanda Karipoga, member of the IPU Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights. The Tawanda Karipoga mentioned today is myself. Zimbabwe's ambassador to Turkey, Ambassador Alfred Mutiwa Zuka, supported the delegation's participation at the 152nd Assembly of the IPU and related meetings in a comprehensive briefing to the presiding officers. Ambassador Mutiwa Zuka mentioned on key operations of the embassy as escorted within the ambit of the foreign policy thrust of the Second Republic. Additionally, Ambassador Mutiwa Zuka informed of his fruitful engagement with the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, as well as the Chairman of the Zimbabwe Turkey Parliamentary Association, Honorable Kadem Mete. In this regard, he recommended the renewal of relations between the two legislatures to deepen mutually beneficial parliamentary cooperation. In furtherance of the parliamentary diplomacy, Speaker Mudenda interfaced with some of his counterparts on the sideline of the 152nd Assembly of the IPU and related meetings. Notably, His Excellency Brahim Bugali, Speaker of the Algerian People's National Assembly, and Honorable Milton Dick, Speaker of the Australian House of Representatives. The meeting with the Algerian Speaker sought to bolster relations between the two legislations, as well as to consolidate positions on the international fora anchored on shared values and principles. In this spirit, Speaker Mudenda pledged Zimbabwe's support for Honorable Dr. Fateh Boutbig, Algeria's candidate for the position of the President of the Pan-African Parliament, PAP. During the interface with Honorable Dick, the Australian Speaker shared the positive development of the launch of Zimbabwe-Australia Parliamentary Friendship Association, headed by a vibrant Member of Parliament who is keen on strengthening relations between the two legislatures. The launch paves the way for exchanges between the two legislatures. I will go to the SADC group and Africa geopolitical group meetings. The SADC group was expectedly chaired by Speaker Mudenda, affectionately known as the Dean of Speakers, in the absence of the substantive SADC PF chair, Honorable Speaker Randia Solonako Thierry Siteni of Madagascar. Notably, the SADC group resolved to support the proposal for an emergency item submitted by the delegations from Qatar, Australia, Turkey, France, Brazil, Zambia, with the support of the Arab group, entitled "The Urgent Need for Concerted Parliamentary Efforts to Preserve Ceasefires and Support Peace Building." For its all-encompassing approach, which affirms the SADC region's position of fostering sustainable global peace through dialogue. Furthermore, the SADC group solidly endorsed the candidature of Ambassador Andra Filip of Romania for the position of Secretary General, is duly informed by a vast experience within the ecosystem of IPU, augmented by career diplomat status. Of special note is the above decisions were made further endorsed by the Africa Geopolitical Group meeting. The key outcomes of the Governing Council. The 217th session of the Governing Council of the IPU held 2 sittings during the 152 assembly of the IPU in related meetings. As the decision-making body of the IPU, the Governing Council pronounced themselves on the following key issues. Number 1, the Governing Council approved the IPU strategy for the 2027 to 2031 period, a result of broad consultation with member parliaments and other stakeholders. The new IPU strategy is underpinned by the IPU policy work on peace and security, democracy, human rights, sustainable development, climate action, and gender equality and youth participation. Number 2, the Governing Council took note of the report of the activities of the President, which highlighted notable activities undertaken by the President in furtherance of the IPU strategic objectives. Number 3, furthermore, the Governing Council took note of the impact report of the IPU activities as presented by the Secretary General. Of particular note is that the Inter-Parliamentary Union made significant strides in implementing its 2022 to 2026 strategy through a renewed focus on its regional mission to bring in parliamentarians together to advance peace, democracy, and development. The Governing Council was satisfied that the IPU financial status is healthy. However, parliaments with outstanding areas were encouraged to clear in order to avoid censure in line with the IPU statutes. The general debate, Madam Speaker, a special segment with keynote speakers was held at the start of the general debate of the theme of the Assembly entitled Nurturing Hope, Securing Peace, and Ensuring Justice for Future Generations. In remarks delivered during the general debate on the theme, Speaker Mudenda extolled the theme for upholding the 1945 United Nations Charter and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly SDG 16, which aims to advance inclusive, peaceful societies, access to social justice, and accountable institutions at every level of governance. Regrettably, Speaker Mudenda noted that despite these commitments, the Sustainable Development Report 2024 confirms that SDG 16 remains among the most severely off track of all 17 sustainable goals. The Honorable Speaker mentioned the scale of today's humanitarian and security crisis, citing the United Nations citing the UNHCR 2023 report indicating that over 117 million people have been forcibly displaced from their homes, while no fewer than 2 billion people live in fragile, conflict-affected, or violent settings. To compound an already perilous scenario, Africa has recorded 44 million internally displaced persons and cross-border refugees, warning that these realities threaten the promise of the African Union silencing the guns initiative and the ambitions of Agenda 2063. Emphasizing that nurturing hope amid ongoing global conflict requires unwavering conviction, Speaker Mudenda exhorted that hope does not disappoint. He explained that justice, understood as fairness, equity, and moral rights, guarantees peace in both present and future generations. He also stressed that the peace dividend must be premised on total respect for international law, rejecting any approach rooted in unipolar hegemony. Madam Speaker, I'll go to forum on women parliamentarians. As per established practice, the Forum of Women Parliamentarians held its 41st session prior to the 152 Second Assembly of the IPU on the 15th of April 2026. President of the Senate, Honorable Chinomona Zimbabwe, mentioned Zimbabwe's position during discussion of draft resolution on the role of parliamentarians in establishing robust post-conflict management mechanisms and restoring a just and lasting peace. In this regard, she illuminated the Parliament of Zimbabwe's experiences, indicating that lasting peace is not achieved by ending conflict alone, but by justice, inclusion, and meaningful participation of often excluded voices, especially women and youth. Furthermore, she highlighted that women parliamentarians are quintessential in the peace processes, as their exclusion risks weakening sustainable recovery and stability. Accordingly, she opined that women and girls are not only beneficiaries of peace, but essential architects of it. Guided by Zimbabwe's constitution, she explained that Zimbabwe strengthening conflict management and monitoring peace-building efforts, advancing protection from gender-based violence through enforcement and survivor support services aligned within the edges of Zimbabwe's national gender policy, as well as placing peace and good governance at the center of development under the Zimbabwe National Development Strategy 2, which will run 2026 to 2030. Madam Speaker, I will read on the meetings of statutory bodies of the IPU. The Zimbabwe delegation also contributed in the wake of the 152 Second Assembly of the IPU through participation in meetings of statutory bodies of the IPU, namely 1. Standing Committee of Peace and International Security, 2. Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs, 3. Standing Committee on Sustainable Development, 4. Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights, 5. Forum of Young Parliamentarians, 6. Working Group on Science and Technology and Committee on Health. Additionally, Honorable Karikoga represented the Honorable Speaker at the 5th Non-Aligned Movement Parliamentary Network Conference held on the sidelines of the 152 Assembly meetings of the IPU and related meetings under the theme Climate Resilient Urbanization. In his address to the conference, Honorable Karikoga shared Zimbabwe's experience, challenges and commitments in advancing climate resilient urbanization, a pressing and localized issue that demands urgent action. To that an extent, Honorable Karikoga highlighted that Zimbabwe is driving a climate resilient urbanization through robust laws, policies, and oversight anchored in Section 73 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which enshrines the right to a healthy environment for all citizens. the outcomes of the 152 Assembly of the IPU. In a historic first, Ambassador Andra Filip of Poland was overwhelmingly elected the 9th Secretary General of the IPU, the first woman to hold the post of the IPU's 137-year history. She is also the first Eastern European to hold the distinguished position. Ambassador Philip will succeed Mr. Martin Chungong of Cameroon, whose third and final term ends on 30 June 2026. Ambassador Philip brings wealth of experience, skills and expertise to the IPU, having served within the IPU Secretariat in various capacities for over 2 decades. Madam Speaker, I will go to the closing ceremony. At the closing ceremony of the IPU member parliaments, represented by the President of the IPU and the chairpersons of the geopolitical groups, offered emotional messages to the outgoing Secretary General in which they appreciated his commitment to the work of the IPU through many milestones he recorded, including promoting gender parity, youth inclusion in activities of the IPU, implementation of the IPU strategy, and promotion of global peace through dialogue and parliamentary diplomacy. Recommendations of the committee. The Portfolio Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Trade should follow up on the engagements the Honorable Speaker had with the counterparts from Egypt and Australia. Indeed, the exchanges unlocked unlimited opportunities to enhance existing relations and exchange parliamentary best practices within the framework of parliamentary friendship associations. In this regard, there is need to expedite the operationalization of these associations to yield tangible outcomes. Additionally, there is need to renew exchanges with the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. This should be during the second quarter of 2026. Parliament should align its legislative oversight and representative functions with the resolutions adopted at the 152 second IPU Assembly, especially those relating to post-conflict peace building, sustainable economic ecosystems, and the regulation of artificial intelligence. This includes strengthening relevant portfolio committees to track implementation of those global commitments at national level. In light of the emergency resolution on ceasefires and peace building, Parliament of Zimbabwe should intensify its role in parliamentary diplomacy by advocating for peace conflict resolution through regional and international platforms such as SADC-PF, the African Parliamentary Union, and the Pan-African Parliament. The Parliament should strengthen the institutional capacity of Zimbabwe's Women Parliamentary Caucus and the Forum of Young Parliamentarians to ensure inclusive participation in governance, in line with the outcomes of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians and the Forum of Young Parliamentarians. There is need for enhanced domestication of international frameworks such as the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, as well as strengthened oversight on gender-based violence interventions in line with the Zimbabwe National Gender Policy of 2025 to 2030. The Parliament of Zimbabwe should ensure timely settlement of its financial obligations to the IPU to maintain good standing and continue participating fully in IPU programs and decision-making processes. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the delegation expresses its gratitude to the government of Zimbabwe and Parliament for affording it the opportunity to represent the institution at the high-level assembly. Accordingly, the delegation calls on thematic and portfolio committees and caucuses to implement to an extent possible the resolutions to extend possible the resolutions under their purview. The full text of resolutions have been circulated. So submit, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Garikoga. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Garikoga that this House takes note of the delegation report of the 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union and the related meetings held in Istanbul, Turkey, from 18 to 23 October 2025. Is there any debate, Honorable Kalemaunga?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion on the report of the 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union held in Istanbul, Turkey, and in doing so, I wish to associate myself fully with the comprehensive presentation made by the mover of this report, Honorable Garikoga. I commend our delegation for its active participation across the Assembly, the Governing Council, the standing committees, and various statutory bodies of the IPU. The report before us, Madam Speaker, reflects an assembly convened at a defining moment in international affairs. As it is rightly observed by the report, the theme nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations was a timely response to an increasingly fractured global order characterized by armed conflict, humanitarian crises, and growing geopolitical tensions. It is therefore, Madam Speaker, significant that this Assembly reaffirmed parliamentary diplomacy as an indispensable complement to traditional statecraft and diplomacy. At a time when diplomatic channels are often constrained by political interests, parliaments continue to provide a unique space for principled dialogue, consensus building, and also the pursuit of peaceful solutions. The report, Madam Speaker, further reports that the Assembly adopted the Istanbul Declaration and significantly the emergency resolution which called for concerted parliamentary efforts to preserve ceasefires and support peace building. As the report notes, Madam Speaker, I think this is very important. This marks the first successful adoption of an emergency item in 3 years at the Interparliamentary Union, meaning that for 3 years the Interparliamentary Union had met at Assembly twice a year and failed to agree on an emergency item. But now this achievement for me demonstrates that despite profound geopolitical divisions, parliamentary engagement continues to build consensus where conventional diplomacy often reaches an impasse. It is a timely reminder for us as Parliament that dialogue remains one of the most enduring instruments of peace. Madam Speaker, I am particularly encouraged that the report consistently highlights how the Assembly linked peace with justice, accountable governance, and inclusive development. It reminds us that peace cannot simply be understood as the absence of conflict. It is sustained by institutions that uphold the rule of law, that protect fundamental rights, and inspire public confidence. Our work as legislators, therefore, learning from this assembly of the IPU, must extend beyond making laws through just effective oversight and meaningful representation. But Parliament itself must become an instrument of peace building and democratic resilience. The report also highlighted, Madam Speaker, the Governing Council's adoption of the IPU strategy for 2027 to 2031. I think that is the Parliament of Zimbabwe must seize the opportunity to leverage the strategy's technical cooperation, because as it was highlighted in the report, I think there are opportunities for peer learning, for institutional capacity building initiatives that are supported by the IPU in their strategy for 2027 to 2031, particularly in areas of climate governance, artificial intelligence, gender equality, youth participation, and peace building. Equally, I think the resolutions adopted at the Assembly should be systematically domesticated through the work of our portfolio committees so that our international commitments are translated to measurable national outcomes. I also want to speak to one other aspect, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I particularly welcome the work of the Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights as reported in the report on advancing parliamentary engagement with artificial intelligence. The report correctly acknowledges that while AI presents unprecedented opportunities, it also introduces profound governance challenges requiring informed legislative leadership. As lawmakers, we cannot afford to regulate yesterday's problems while tomorrow's technologies reshape our societies. Madam Speaker, ma'am, should Parliament of Zimbabwe should therefore, or ourselves, we should therefore move towards a comprehensive legislative framework on artificial intelligence, data governance, and algorithm accountability that protects citizens' rights and promotes responsible innovation and ensures transparency in the deployment of AI within both the public and private sectors, learning from the engagements that we had at the IPU Assembly. I just want to quickly also say that the Parliament of Zimbabwe is, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, I think these recommendations that were given in the report and what I am also speaking about, they resonate strongly with the direction of our own Parliament at this point. Through the establishment of the Committee of the Future under the CSRO framework. This is a progressive institutional reform that should now be adequately capacitated with strategic foresight, expertise, technology assessment capabilities, and robust research support to strengthen anticipatory governance. In an area of rapid technological disruption, Parliament must be equipped not merely to respond to change, but to anticipate it and to shape it through evidence-based lawmaking and oversight. Just the last thing that I want to speak to as I second this report, Madam Speaker, ma'am, and this is very important, I think, for Parliament to note. It was mentioned in the report, but this is a milestone. I wish to highlight what I consider one of the defining moments of the Interparliamentary Union. The election of Ambassador Anda Philippe as the first female Secretary General of the IPU in its 137 years history. There's never been a female Secretary General. She is the first one to be elected at this IPU, and I really think it deserves a round of applause. Thank you. It is a matter of pride, of particular pride, that the Zimbabwean delegation, under the leadership of the Honorable Speaker Advocate Mudenda, unequivocally supported the candidature right from the start in the SADC group, in the Africa group, and in a subsequent election at the General Assembly. In doing so, I believe our delegation affirmed a principle that should continue to define Zimbabwe's engagement in multilateral institutions, but also that should continuously define our, how we do things in this house. That leadership is neither conferred or constrained by gender, but it is earned through competence, integrity, and the capacity to serve. The historic election was therefore not a mere milestone for women. It was a triumph of meritocracy and affirmation that representative institutions like parliaments are strongest when they recognize excellence above all else. Madam Speaker, ma'am, this report demonstrates that Zimbabwe continues to make meaningful contributions to global parliamentary discourse and parliamentary diplomacy, while simultaneously drawing valuable lessons that can strengthen our own institutions. The true value of our participation, however, will ultimately be measured by our ability to domesticate these commitments, all those recommendations that were given in the report, through stronger legislation, more effective oversight, and institutions that are responsive to the aspirations of our people. Parliamentary diplomacy, Madam Speaker, ma'am, achieves its highest purpose when international engagement produces tangible national progress and does not just end in reports. With these observations, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I have the pleasure and the honor to second the motion and the report by Honorable Karko. I so submit.
Further debate, recognize Committee.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that the debate will not.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate?
I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what day, Deputy Chief?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
To tomorrow.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that we proceed to order number 20, 21, and 22 in that order. I thank you.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
Notice of motion number 20, Honorable Malinganiso.
I move the motion in my name.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
I call upon Honorable Malinganiso to move his motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ma'am, I rise to present a report of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare as joined with the Thematic Committee on Human Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the pursuit of universal human rights and human dignity remains an unfinished global endeavor, and the inclusion of persons with disabilities stands as one of its most pressing and defining chapters. Globally, over 1.3 billion people, which is about 16% of the world's population, experience significant disability, and persons with disabilities are disproportionately excluded from education, employment, healthcare, and social participation. The Constitution of Zimbabwe, in particular Section 22, guarantees equality and non-discrimination and expressly protects the rights of persons with disabilities, requiring the state to take proactive measures to promote their inclusion in all spheres of life. Zimbabwe's development agenda situates disability inclusion within its human capital, social protection, and economic empowerment priorities. The national vision articulated in Vision 2030 envisages an inclusive, equitable society where all citizens contribute to and benefit from national prosperity. According to the Zimbabwe 2022 Population and Housing Census report, disability prevalence is estimated at approximately 9.5% of the national population, underscoring the significant scale of inclusion that development planning must address. Yet, persons with disabilities continue to face systemic barriers, ranging from inaccessible infrastructure and social services to exclusion from formal employment and political life. Against this backdrop, the Joint Portfolio Committee on Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare and the Thematic Committee on Human Rights undertook an inquiry to evaluate whether existing legislative, policy and administrative measures align with international standards, the Constitution of Zimbabwe and the national development imperatives, as well as identifying gaps that must be addressed to translate formal commitments into meaningful lived inclusion for persons with disabilities. The objectives of the inquiry, Madam Speaker, were to assess the welfare and living conditions of persons with disabilities in institutions and communities, assess the impact of social welfare grants and other assistive devices afforded to persons with disabilities, proffer recommendations on enforceable reforms that ensure the full inclusion and equal participation of persons with disabilities. And in terms of the methodology, Madam Speaker, oral evidence meeting with the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare and persons with disabilities and persons with disability interest groups were done. Fact-finding visits to centers of persons with disabilities were also conducted, and also public hearings. I will turn, Madam Speaker, to commit findings, and I'll start with the legal and policy framework governing the rights of persons with disabilities. The first is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, commonly known as the UNCRPD, which was ratified by Zimbabwe on 23 September 2013 committing the state to upholding the rights of persons with disabilities in line with international standards. The UNCRPD emphasizes accessibility, participation, and equality as guiding principles for national policies and practices. The second, Madam Speaker, is the African Disability Protocol. And Zimbabwe has ratified and domesticated the protocol. The African Protocol is the African Disability Protocol, which was also ratified and domesticated by the state. The third is the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Madam Speaker, the Constitution of Zimbabwe enunciates disability issues as a national objective. Section 22 and 83 articulate significant advancement towards expanding the rights of persons with disabilities in the country. It guarantees rights to equality and non-discrimination. It states that persons with disabilities have the right to dignity, respect, and the opportunity to live independently. The Constitution further mandates the state to take appropriate measures to ensure full participation and equality for persons with disabilities in various aspects of life, including education, employment, and health care. Then, when we conducted the interviews and the visits and the public hearings, we were guided by the Disabled Persons Act, Chapter 1701 of 1992, that has since been repealed and replaced by the Persons with Disabilities Act, Chapter 1713 of 2025. Then there's the National Disability Policy, Madam Speaker. The policy, which was launched on the 9th of June 2021, outlines the government's commitment to enhance the quality of life for persons with disabilities. The policy sets key standards, an implementation framework, and responsibility and accountability under each key standard. The policy ensures multi-sectoral responsibility for upholding the rights of persons with disabilities among the 26 government-line ministries, parastatals, independent commissions, and organizations of and for persons with disabilities. Madam Speaker, may I attend to measures to uphold disability rights by the Ministry of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, and I begin with education. The Ministry submitted that they pay tuition for children with disabilities through the Basic Education Assistance Module, commonly known as BEAM, from early childhood learning to advanced levels, including boarding fees for special schools and examination fees. The same support is available for college, universities, and vocational training fees, with the Ministry paying for tuition and boarding fees up to master's level. The Ministry also administers 3 vocational training schools that offer free accommodation, tuition, and food for students with disabilities. The institutions are Loden Lodge, School for Girls, Ruwa National Rehabilitation Center, and Beatrice National Rehabilitation Center. Then we have the Disability Revolving Loan. The Disability Revolving Loan, Madam Speaker, is provided to entrepreneurs with disabilities to access loans without need for a guarantor. The Ministry submitted that a maximum of $1,000 payable in local currency at the prevailing interbank rate is availed to an individual as startup support, and recipients can embark on a project of their choice. Then I turn to employment, Madam Speaker. The Ministry submitted that the Public Service Commission was the biggest employer of persons with disabilities and pays salaries for those in need of personal assistance. Then submissions from organizations for persons with disabilities. The committee, Madam Speaker, consulted with the National Council of Disabled Persons of Zimbabwe and the National Association of Societies for the Care of the Handicapped, and came up with the following findings. The first is access to health care and communication rights. Persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe continue to encounter major barriers in accessing health care services, particularly due to communication challenges, inaccessible infrastructure, and discriminatory attitudes within health institutions. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the hearing impaired persons face severe exclusion because there are very few qualified sign language interpreters in public healthcare facilities, resulting in misdiagnosis, breaches of confidentiality, and inadequate treatment outcomes. Organizations further submitted that many patients with hearing impairments rely on family members to interpret sensitive medical information, compromising both dignity and quality of care. Physical inaccessibility of clinics and hospitals further disadvantages persons with mobility impairments, while healthy information is rarely available in Braille, sign language, or simplified formats. Women with disabilities experience compounded discrimination in maternal health care, including lower access to prenatal care and higher maternal health risks compared to non-disabled women. I turn, Madam Speaker, ma'am, to education rights and inclusive learning. The committee established that despite constitutional guarantees on the right to education, children with disabilities continue to experience widespread exclusion from Zimbabwe's education system. Studies cited in the submissions revealed that only a small proportion of children with disabilities have access to formal education, while many schools lack ramps, accessible toilets, adaptive learning materials, specialist teachers, and inclusive teaching methodologies. Negative societal attitudes and limited teacher preparedness further reinforce exclusion, particularly for girls with disabilities and children in rural communities. Evidence also showed that children with disabilities often begin school much later than their non-disabled peers due to accessibility barriers and inadequate support systems. Underfunding of inclusive education programs and insufficient beam support for learners with disabilities contribute to high dropout rates and poor educational attainment, thereby perpetuating long-term poverty and social exclusion. I turn, Madam Speaker, to transport accessibility and mobility rights. Transport systems in Zimbabwe remain largely inaccessible to persons with disabilities, limiting their participation in education, employment, healthcare, and community life. Public buses, combis, and transport terminals often lack wheelchair access, auditory and visual communication systems, and other universal design features necessary for inclusive mobility. Disability organizations highlighted that many transport operators discriminate against passengers with disabilities, while accessible private transport alternatives are significantly more expensive, deepening economic hardship. Urban infrastructure, such as narrow pavements, overcrowded streets, and inaccessible public buildings further compound mobility challenges. The absence of a fully operational inclusive public transport policy continues to undermine constitutional commitments to accessibility and equality. I turn, Madam Speaker, to economic exclusion and poverty. Organizations submitted that persons with disabilities face disproportionately high levels of unemployment, poverty, and economic marginalization in Zimbabwe. Many are excluded from formal employment opportunities due to workplace discrimination, inaccessible work environments, and limited access to vocational training and assistive technologies. Women with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to exploitation, gender-based violence, and dependence on informal life. The high cost of assistive devices such as wheelchairs, hearing aids, and screen reader software places them beyond the reach of most households, while social protection programs remain inadequate and inaccessible to many beneficiaries. This creates a vicious cycle in which poverty increases vulnerability to disability, while disability simultaneously reinforces deeper poverty and dependence. I turn, Madam Speaker, to social stigma and cultural discrimination. The committee noted that deeply entrenched cultural beliefs and stigma continue to undermine the dignity and social inclusion of persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe. Disability is often associated with witchcraft, punishment, or misfortune, leading to discrimination, isolation, and exclusion from community activities and decision-making processes. Women and girls with disabilities face heightened risks of abuse, neglect, and gender-based violence due to harmful stereotypes that portray them as dependent or incapable. Such stigma discourages many persons with disabilities from seeking health care, education, employment, and justice services, thereby reinforcing exclusion and marginalization. Disability organizations have therefore emphasized the importance of community awareness campaigns, anti-stigma programs, and engagement with traditional and community leaders to transform societal attitudes toward disability. I turn, Madam Speaker, to access to justice and political participation. Organizations submitted that access to justice remains limited for many persons with disabilities due to inaccessible courts, police stations, legal procedures, and communication systems. Disability organizations reported that many public hearings, legal documents, and civic participation processes are not available in accessible formats such as Braille, plain language, or sign language interpretation. Political representation of persons with disabilities also remains significantly low despite constitutional commitments to inclusion. Current parliamentary representation does not adequately reflect the proportion of persons with disabilities within the national population, limiting their influence on policy making and governance. Voting procedures and electoral systems also remain inaccessible to many visually impaired and intellectually disabled citizens, compromising the secrecy and independence of the ballot. I turn, Madam Speaker, to welfare and living conditions of persons with disabilities in institutions. And I start with overcrowding. Madam Speaker, the committee established that the living conditions in institutions catering for persons with disabilities were, in some instances, substandard, overcrowded, and inconsistent with minimum human dignity thresholds emphasized in the Constitution. At Jairus Giri School for the Blind in Adoma, enrollment exceeded institutional carrying capacity, resulting in overcrowded boarding facilities where primary and secondary learners were compelled to share limited space. Then I turn to infrastructure, Madam Speaker. The committee noted that dilapidated and inadequate infrastructure is a widespread and systemic challenge across institutions of persons with disabilities, significantly undermining living conditions and service delivery. At Sloela Old People's Home in Kwekwe, facilities were in a deteriorated state and lacked reliable water sources, while Jairus Giri School for the Blind in Kadoma was operating beyond its intended capacity, resulting in overstretched boarding and sanitation facilities. At Lodge and Lodge in Mtare, there was a challenge of non-disability-friendly accommodation, and similarly at Yugo School for the Blind in Mashingo. Incomplete infrastructure projects and rising enrollment have led to congested learning and residential spaces. I turn, Madam Speaker, to health care and rehabilitation. The committee established that access to health care and rehabilitation services for persons with disabilities was severely constrained. Across institutions and communities visited, there was a pronounced shortage of specialized personnel, including physiotherapists, audiologists, and rehabilitation practitioners, coupled with inadequate equipment and poorly resourced facilities. At Ishe Anesu Rehabilitation Center in Harare, the physiotherapy unit is ill-equipped and lacks a resident therapist, significantly limiting the effectiveness of rehabilitation programs, while with Sloela Old People's Home, access to essential medication for conditions such as epilepsy and psychiatric disorders was inconsistent and inadequate. From the public consultations, the committee further noted that the near absence of sign language interpretation services across public health institutions constituted a functional barrier to healthcare access for persons with hearing impairments, effectively excluding them from meaningful interaction with health professionals. Public submissions also highlighted the centralization of specialized services, which forces individuals in rural areas to travel long distances to access care. thereby increasing financial and logistical burdens. I turn, Madam Speaker, to assistive devices. The committee noted that access to assistive devices for persons with disabilities remains highly constrained, fragmented, and inequitable, thereby limiting independence and effective participation in education, economic activities, and community life. Across institutions and districts visited, there was a persistent shortage of essential devices such as wheelchairs, prosthetics, clutches, hearing aids, and specialized educational tools, with many beneficiaries either remaining on waiting lists or relying on outdated and non-functional equipment. At Slovela Old People's Home, residents lacked adequate assistive devices, including functional wheelchairs and prosthetics. Submissions given by the public in different provinces indicated that requests processed through social welfare systems were not fulfilled, indicating administrative inefficiencies and weak follow-through mechanisms. Public hearings further revealed that the cost of acquiring assistive devices is prohibitively high for most households, effectively excluding persons with disabilities from accessing essential support, while concerns were also raised regarding inequitable distribution and instances of misallocation. The institutions also submitted that the absence of a coordinated national procurement and distribution framework has resulted in over-reliance on donor support and ad hoc interventions which are neither sustainable nor predictable. I turn, Madam Speaker, to skills training and development, and I start with specialized learning material. The committee established that the availability and adequacy of specialized learning materials for learners with disabilities remain critically insufficient, thereby undermining the delivery of inclusive and equitable education. Across institutions visited, there was a pronounced shortage of essential assistive learning technologies, including braille machines, embossers, scientific talking calculators, and up-to-date braille textbooks, resulting in learners being unable to fully engage with this curriculum. At Jairus Giri School for the Blind in Kadoma, limited access to braille learning materials left learners lagging behind in the implementation of the updated curriculum, while the high cost of procuring and maintaining braille equipment continued to constrain the institution's capacity. Similarly, at Yugo School for the Blind in Mashingo, reliance on manual writing methods such as slates and styluses, coupled with inadequate teaching and learning materials, reflected slow progress towards digitalization and modern assistive learning systems despite increasing enrollment and demand for quality education. The committee further noted that high teacher-to-student ratios in specialized settings exacerbated the problem as learners requiring individualized support were compelled to operate in resource-constrained environments. Then I turn, Madam Speaker, to education funding. The committee noted that the basic education assistance module remained a central mechanism for supporting access to education, while BEAM has played a critical role in enabling vulnerable learners, including those with disabilities, to enroll and remain in school. Its effectiveness is significantly undermined by persistent delays and inconsistencies in disbursement. Evidence from institutions such as King George VI Center and Jairus Giri School for the Blind in Kadoma indicates that arrears in BEAM payments have accumulated over multiple academic cycles, leaving schools unable to meet operational costs and compromising the provision of boarding, learning materials, and essential support services. At Jairus Giri School for the Blind, they reported that their last disbursement was in 2022, forcing the institution to operate under severe financial strain despite high enrollment and specialized needs. Similarly, at Yugo School for the Blind, where the majority of learners rely on BEAM, delayed payments have disrupted institutional planning and the delivery of education services. Public submissions further revealed that in the absence of predictable funding, some schools continue to demand fees from learners with disabilities contrary to policy intent, thereby shifting the financial burden back onto already vulnerable households. Collectively, these findings demonstrate that while BEAM remains a critical social protection instrument, its current implementation is inconsistent and insufficiently reliable to guarantee sustained and equitable access to education for persons with disabilities. I turn, Madam Speaker, to economic disempowerment and social protection. From the public hearings held, the committee noted that economic empowerment and social protection mechanisms for persons with disabilities remained limited in scope, inconsistently implemented, and largely ineffective in promoting sustainable livelihoods. Evidence from public hearings indicates that persons with disabilities are systematically excluded from key government empowerment programs, including agricultural input schemes, land allocation frameworks, and income-generating initiatives, despite existing policy provisions intended to guarantee their inclusion. In districts such as Zimba, participants reported that programs such as fertilizer distribution and community development projects have not reached persons with disabilities, while limited access to startup capital and lack of structured post-training support continue to undermine the transition from skills acquisition to economic participation. The committee, Madam Speaker, further established that social protection systems were weak and unreliable, characterized by low-value grants, irregular disbursements, and in some cases, complete non-payment despite beneficiary registration. Reports of mobile money transfers failing to materialize and continued demands for school fees highlighted serious gaps in implementation and accountability. In addition, the public submitted that high user fees for public services, including council charges, further marginalized persons with disabilities and eroded their limited incomes. Collectively, these conditions indicated that economic empowerment initiatives are not sufficiently inclusive, while social protection mechanisms are not providing predictable income security, thereby perpetuating vulnerability, dependence, and exclusion from meaningful participation in national development. I turn now, Madam Speaker, to committee observations. Number one is persistent implementation gap between the legal framework and lived realities. Madam Speaker, while Zimbabwe has a progressive constitutional and international legal framework on disability rights, the inquiry established that these protections have not yet translated into tangible and enforceable entitlements on the ground. This reflects not a policy deficit, but an implementation and coordination challenge across sectors, which is limiting the realization of sections 22 and 83 of the Constitution and slowing the attainment of inclusive national development. The second, Madam Speaker, is unpredictable and inadequate financing that is undermining service delivery. The delay and inconsistent disbursement of BEAM funds has created a structural vulnerability in institutions that cater for learners with disabilities, affecting their capacity to procure assistive learning materials, retain skilled staff, and maintain operations. This financing model makes planning impossible and places the right to education for learners with disabilities in a precarious and unsustainable position. The third, Madam Speaker, is the current state of infrastructure that is incompatible with inclusive education. The absence of disability-friendly hostels, classrooms, ablution facilities, and transport systems is directly contributing to school dropouts and low retention levels. This indicates that inclusion is being pursued within an infrastructure framework that was not designed for diversity, thereby structurally excluding learners with disabilities despite the existence of inclusive education policies. The fourth, Madam Speaker, is weak transition mechanisms from training to economic participation. Although rehabilitation and vocational training centers are imparting valuable skills, there is no clear pathway into tertiary education, entrepreneurship, or formal employment due to lack of startup capital, high cost of support services, and absence of deliberate labor market linkages. This results in a cycle where training does not translate into economic empowerment, thereby limiting the contribution of persons with disabilities to national productivity. The fifth, Madam Speaker, ma'am, is communication barriers in the health sector amounting to functional exclusion. The near absence of sign language interpretation services in public health institutions effectively denies the visually impaired persons access to health care on an equal basis with others. This transforms what should be a service delivery gap into a rights-based concern, as access to health cannot be realized where communication itself is not facilitated. The sixth, Madam Speaker, ma'am, is assistive device provision that is constrained by both capacity and accountability challenges. The shortage, high cost, and reported irregularities in the distribution of assistive devices point to the need for a more transparent, adequately funded, and decentralized procurement and allocation system. Without reliable access to assistive technologies, participation in education, employment, and community life remains severely restricted. The seventh, Madam Speaker, ma'am, is disability inclusion that is not yet mainstreamed in economic empowerment programs. The limited participation of persons with disabilities in land allocation, procurement frameworks, and empowerment initiatives indicates that disability is still treated as a social welfare issue rather than a cross-cutting economic development matter. This is the effect of unintentionally excluding a significant demographic from contributing to and benefiting from national growth. The eighth, Madam Speaker, ma'am, and the last one is social protection mechanisms that are not yet providing reliable income security. The minimal value, inconsistent disbursement, and non-operationalization of key support mechanisms such as the disability levy weaken the social protection function and perpetuate vulnerability among persons with disabilities. Predictable and adequate support is essential for safeguarding dignity, enhancing independence, and reducing long-term dependency. I turn, Madam Speaker, ma'am, to the committee's recommendations. Cognizant of the above observations, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the following are the committee's recommendations. Number one, the Minister of Finance should ring-fence beam support for learners with disabilities and operationalize the disability levy to create a sustainable funding stream for disability programs by December 2026. Number two, the Ministry of Health and Child Care should institutionalize sign language interpretation services at all public health facilities as part of the health service establishment by December 2026. In my view, Madam Speaker, ma'am, even including in the curriculum for nurse training, that they also be equipped with the skill of sign language. Number three, the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare should review disability grant levies, guarantee regular monthly disbursements, and integrate beneficiaries into livelihood and empowerment programs by December 2026. Number four, the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare must review and adjust disability grants in line with the poverty datum line by December 2027. Number five, the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare must enforce the minimum operational standards for institutions serving persons with disabilities by December 2026. Number six, the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare must establish a national assistive devices acquisition and distribution framework that guarantees timely, affordable, and equitable access for persons with disabilities by June 2027. Number seven, the Ministry of Local Government and Public Works should adopt and implement a national inclusive public transport policy that compels all public transport operators to comply with universal accessibility standards by December 2027. Number eight, the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development should establish targeted empowerment programs for women and girls with disabilities, including access to microfinance, vocational training, safe shelters, and gender-based violence response services by December 2027. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the Joint Portfolio Committee on Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare and the Thematic Committee on Human Rights recognize the significant progress made by the Second Republic in establishing a robust constitutional, legislative and policy framework for the protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities. However, the inquiry established that the promotion of the rights of the full realization of these rights is being constrained by implementation, financing, and coordination challenges which continue to limit equitable access to education, health services, economic opportunities, assistive technologies, and social protection. The committee therefore reiterates that disability inclusion is not a welfare consideration, but a constitutional, human rights, and national development priority that requires a whole of government, adequately resourced, and results-based approach. The committee is confident that the timely implementation of the recommendations contained in this report will accelerate the attainment of an inclusive society in which persons with disabilities participate fully and contribute meaningfully to national development in line with Vision 2030 and the National Development Strategy. In fulfillment of its constitutional mandate, Parliament will continue to exercise rigorous oversight to ensure measurable progress, enhanced accountability, and the progressive realization of the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe. I so submit, and I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Malinganiso that this House considers and adopts the report of the Joint Portfolio Committee on Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare and Thematic Committee on Human Rights on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Zimbabwe, SC 24 of 2026. Is there any debate? I call upon Honorable Mavudzi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to second the report of the Joint Committee on Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare and the Thematic Committee on Human Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe as delivered by the Honorable Dexter Malinganiso, the chairperson of the Committee on Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare. At the outset, I wish to commend the chairperson and the members of the Joint Committee for undertaking a comprehensive inquiry across the country. The report before this House is not merely about disability. It is a constitutional promise of equality, dignity, and inclusion. It is about whether Zimbabwe is prepared to ensure that no citizen is left behind. Section 22 of the Constitution obliges the states to recognize the rights of persons with disability and to take appropriate measures to ensure that their full participation in society is guaranteed. Likewise, Section 83 guarantees the rights to dignity, equal opportunities in education, employment, and public life. The committee found that while Zimbabwe has got progressive laws and has ratified international instruments such as the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the greatest challenge, Madam Speaker, remains implementation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the first critical issue that I found very, very critical is the issue of a persistent gap between policy and reality. The committee found that constitutional guarantees have not been translated into meaningful improvements in the lives of many persons with disabilities. Too many citizens continue to encounter inaccessible schools, hospitals, transport systems, and workplaces. This is not because we lack policies, but because the implementation has been inconsistent and not well coordinated. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I wish to highlight the crisis in inclusive education. The committee established that many schools lack ramps, accessible toilets, braille learning material, specialist teachers, and assistive technologies. Worse still, Madam Speaker, institutions such as the Jairus Jiri School for the Blind, King George VI Center, the Hugo
School for the Blind continue to operate under severe financial pressure because beam disbursements have been delayed for years. Some schools last received beam payments in 2022, yet they continue to educate the vulnerable learners. This situation, Madam Speaker, is unsustainable. Education should never be a privilege simply because a learner has a disability. The other issue, Madam Speaker, that I found disturbing is the stigma that the people with disabilities face in our health institutions. Many public hospitals do not have sign language interpreters. This means that the deaf citizens cannot communicate with healthcare professionals, resulting in delayed diagnosis, compromised confidentiality, and poor treatment outcomes. Basic health information is rarely available in accessible format, Madam Speaker. Health cannot truly be universal if communication itself is inaccessible. Madam Speaker, another pressing issue is the shortage of assistive devices. The committee observed that many institutions lack wheelchairs, prosthetics, hearing aids, and other essential equipment. Many beneficiaries remain on the waiting list while others depend entirely on donor support. Without assistive devices, persons with disabilities are denied access to education, employment, and independent living. I therefore fully support the recommendation for a national framework to procure and distribute assistive devices in a transparent and equitable and sustainable manner. Another issue, Madam Speaker, of concern is the issue of economic exclusion, which remains widespread. Despite existing empowerment policies, many people with disabilities remain excluded from these programs. Programs such as land allocation, employment opportunities, income generating initiatives. Skills acquired, Madam Speaker, through vocational training frequently fail to translate into sustainable employment because of inadequate access to finance and weak links with industry. Disability should never be viewed solely as a welfare issue. It's an economic development issue. Zimbabwe cannot achieve Vision 2030 while excluding nearly 1 in 10 citizens from productive participation. Madam Speaker, equally concerning is the issue of living conditions observed by the committee. Institutions visited by the committee, Madam Speaker, reported overcrowding, deteriorating infrastructure, inadequate sanitation facilities, shortage of medication, insufficient rehabilitation services. Such conditions fall below standards of dignity envisaged in our Constitution. Persons with disabilities deserve facilities that promote independence, safety, and respect. As Parliament, Madam Speaker, our responsibility does not end with articulating reports. We must vigorously and religiously exercise our oversight role to ensure that the recommendations proposed are implemented within the timelines proposed by the committee. The ministry must report regularly on progress and resources must be allocated accordingly. I so submit. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you for the debate. I recognize the Chief Whip.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that the debate do now adjourn.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what day?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
The debate is adjourned to tomorrow. Order. I wish to recognize the presence of His Excellency Mr. Serge Bedkov, Ambassador of the Federation of the Republic of Russia to Zimbabwe in the Speaker's Gallery. You are most welcome. I have to inform the House that I have received non-adverse report from the Parliamentary Legal Committee on Biological and Toxic Weapons Crimes Bill HB 9A of 2025. Notice of motion number 21, Honorable Maposa.
Remove in my name.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
I call upon Honorable Maposa to move his motion.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. Madam, good afternoon. Section 49 of 1BC of Public Finance Management Act requires the accounting authority of every public entity to prepare annual financial statement and to submit them to the Auditor General and Accountant General within 2 months of the end of each financial year. This statutory obligation is a cornerstone of public financial accountability, enabling independent verification of how public funds have been managed. Honorable Speaker, Madam, non-submission of financial statement is a breach of the PFMA that compromises transparent, weakens public accountability, and undermines the constitutional mandate of Parliament to monitor and oversees the expenditure of all state institutions as provided for under Section 299 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the Public Accounts Committee noted with concern that a significant number of state-owned enterprises, SOEs, and parastatals had failed to submit annual financial statements for audit for consecutive financial years. The institution cited a non-compliance including Chitungwiza, Inguchen Hospital, Zimbabwe Defense University, the Nurses Council, New Ziana Zimbabwe United Passengers Company ZUPCO, the Zimbabwe Youth Council, Silo Foods, Zimbabwe Academic and Research Center, Denford Mines, the National Handcraft Center, the National Librarians and Domestication Center. Honorable Speaker, Madam, objectives of the inquiry. The committee accordingly exercised its oversight function by inquiring into the cause of non-compliance and proffer recommendations to ensure adherence to the statutory financial reporting. To identify and understand the root cause of delays and the non-submission of financial statement by SOEs and parastatals. Number 2, to assess the implication of such compliance and accountability, transparent and sound public financial management. 3, to make recommendations and aim at improving timelines, compliance and quality of financial statement submitted to the Auditor General's Office. Honorable Speaker, Madam, methodology. The committee exercised the Auditor General's report for the financial year ended 31 December 2024, which was tabled in Parliament on 23 July 2025, with particular attention to findings of entities that failed to submit financial statement for audit. Oral submissions were received from the accounting officers of Chitungwiza, Inguchen Hospital, Zimbabwe Defense University, the Nurses Council, New Ziana ZUPCO, and the Zimbabwe Youth Council, Silo and the Zimbabwe Academic Research Center, Denford Mines and National Handcraft Center, and the National Librarians Documentation Centers. Honorable Speaker, Madam, coming to committee findings, the Auditor General report revealed that a number of state-owned enterprises did not submit their financial statement for auditing. The National Handcraft Center and the National Librarians and Documentation Center failed to submit statement for a period of 13 years. Honorable Speaker, Madam, since 2009 to 2024. Additionally, the Zimbabwe Defense University failed to submit for 4 years, as from 2021 to 2024. Furthermore, Chitungwiza Hospitals, Denford Mines Private Limited, and the Zimbabwe Academic and Research Center were also non-compliant, having failed to submit statement for 2022, 2023, and 2024. Final, Honorable Speaker, in Kucheni Central Hospitals, the Nurse Council, Silo Foods Private Limited, ZUPCO, and the Zimbabwe Youth Council, New Ziana failed to submit their financial statement for 2023 and 2024. Based on evidence received from accounting officer and the Auditor General's reports, the committee identified the following 5 principal categories of causes for non-submission of financial statements. Honorable Speaker, Madam, number 4.1, human resources constraints. Human resources constraints emerges as human resources constraints emerges as pervasive and systematic cause of non-compliance across the institution examined. This defines manifested in the 3 forms, which are understaffing of the finance department, the employment of personnel who qualified were insufficient for the complexity of the reporting functions, and decentralization staff turnover in key finance roles. Honorable Speaker, Madam, at Inkucheni Central Hospital, the Chief Medical Officer informed the committee that the finance department operated with only 6 accounting personnel holding qualifications ranging from certificates of high national diplomas, who were responsible for managing daily financial operations and statutory reporting for a workforce of 720. This limits the department capacity to discharge its reporting obligation without depolitization statutory submission. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education confirmed to the committee that the National Librarians and Documentation Service operated without a qualified accountant throughout the period under review. The consequence was no financial records were captured, rendering the preparation of financial statement for audit impossible for a period of 13 years. The Zimbabwe Youth Council reported that only 3 of each 13 approved financial positions were filled during the period of under review. This left a skeleton team responsible for coordination financial data across 10 provinces, resulting in a severe bottleneck in data capturing, consolidation, and reporting. These constraints were further exacerbated when the finance manager department in early 2023 creating a gap in accordance to only particularly resolved months later. The National Handicraft Center operating without a board of directors from 2017 to 2024. The acting general manager for National Handicraft Center, Mr. Gwerume, submitted that this governs vacuum weekend institution oversight and accountability. Staff overturn is key. Finance positions such as finance manager, accountant posts mean that remaining personnel were compelled to ensure incompatible duties, further degrading the quality and continuity of financial records. Denford Mine explains the frequent accountant transition between 23 and 2024, resulting in the loss of institutional memory and disrupt of the audit trail, which slowly and watching new personnel. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee observations. The committee observed that human resources deficiency continued as a primary and systematic cause of the failure to submit financial statement for auditing by multiple institutions. This capacity crisis manifested in understaffing, the deployment of underqualified personnel in key financial roles, destabilizing staff turnover, in some cases a complete absence of oversight due to vacancy boards. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee recommendations. The Treasury, the Public Service Commission, and relevant line ministries by 31 August 2026 should conduct a human resources audit on non-compliance on SOSE's Finance Department and implement a mandatory time-bound plan to fill critical vacancies with appropriate qualified personnel. Number 2, Honorable Speaker, ma'am, line ministries should by 30 June 2026 ensure the immediate and lawful constitution of boards of directors for all SOEs currently without boards. 3, the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education must table with the committee within 30 days of adopting of the report a full account of how the National Librarians and Documentation Service operated for 13 years without a qualified accountant, including an explanation of how this position was supervised by the ministry without that period. Financial management system failures, Honorable Speaker, Madam, 4.2. The inadequate, obsolete, and in some of cases, complete absence of functional financial management system was identified as a cause of non-business across several SOEs. This system fails undermine the liability of financial data, destroying audit trail, and in certain instances, resulting in the permanent loss of financial records in all these SOEs. The chief officer at Inguchen Central Hospital submitted that the hospital has parastatal evaluation accounting software license elapsed in 2021 following a non-payment forcing the finance department to revert to entire manual processes. This substantial increased the time required to prepare financial statements whenever they are doing their in manual. Chitungwiza Central Hospital experienced a crash of its SAP accounting system in 2022. That resulted in the loss of vital financial data, including debtors, creditors, and cash book. This data loss exposes financial weaknesses in the hospital internal controls, including the absence of system backups and an over license and unsynchronous annual access records as a fallback. Furthermore, the National Handicraft Center operated without an accounting system throughout the period under review. Its records were maintained on manual worksheets and financial statements prepared for the years 2009 to 2018 were lost following a computer crash with no backups having been maintained. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the Zimbabwe Defense University similar label entire on annual system for accounting data capture, which undermines both the financial and the verification of its financial records. ZUPCO revised its data capture module with ERP system to record financial transactions at the individual vehicles level, requiring the daily posting of approximately 1,426 way bills across the depots. While the reconfiguration was intended to enhance operations performance, monitoring it resulting in a delay of about 15 months in finalization of the 2022 financial year accounts. ZUPCO subsequently undertook a further ERP upgrade of accommodate multiple currency and branch accounting, which introduced further configuration timelines and contribute to continued delay in financial reporting for 2023 and 2024 financial year. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the Nurse Council of Zimbabwe highlighted that a new accounting system was introduced in 2023, whose adoption slowly reported as staff adjusted to the platform. compounded by the limited capacity to manage both the transactions and existing reporting backlog concurrently. The Chief Executive Officer of Silo Industries, Mr. Due, informed the committee that Silo Food Industries operated on a shared SAP AI system belongs to the Grain Marketing Board, over which it had no independent control and only intermediate access. This depends on an extra entity system over which Silo Foods, no governance left it unable to access complete and timely financial data, contributing directly to its failure to finalize financial statement for 2023 and 2024. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Committee observations. The committee observed that the absence of any data backup protocols lands on obsolete. Dissatisfaction on non-existent financial management system is a major enabler of non-compliance. The lapse of software licenses, unlimited systems crash resulting in a data loss, complete lines on manual process at multiple entities demonstrate a systematic failure of basic financial infrastructure across the SOEs sector. Honorable Speaker, Madam. New system adoption and ERP upgrades at ZUPCO and the NESIS Council were undertaken without adequate parallel running arrangement or resourcing to ensure that statutory deadlines could still be met during the transaction period. Committee recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Madam. All SOEs should, by 31 August 2026, confirm to the Accounting General in writing that their accounting systems are licensed, operational, and maintained by qualified staff. Where a license is elapsed or a system is non-functional, a recommendation timeline should be submitted. Number 2, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The Accounting General should issue a directive requiring all SOs to maintain verification of site data, backups of all financial records, updated at minimum on a weekly basis. Complying with this directive must verify by internal audit. The Treasurer should immediately direct the Grain Marketing Board to provide Silo Foods industry with dedicated independent access to its own financial data on the SAS AI system, or alternative fund the immigrant of Silo Foods industry to its own standalone financial management system within 2026 financial year than to share. Honorable Speaker, Madam, coming to economic and financial constraints, several entities demonstrated that financial constraints arising from inadequate government funding, decline on revenue streams, and cumulative effects of Zimbabwe's high inflation environment. The National Handicraft Center presented evidence that although financial statements were prepared for the years 2009 to 2018, the entity could not submit their audit because the association audit costs were unfavorable given the prevailing financial constrained environment. In addition, the company did not receive any funding supporting until late 2024, which further undermines its capacity to sustain proper financial reporting and meeting statutory audit requirements. Coming to Louisiana, cited financial constraint as the primary cause of its failure to submit 2022 and the 2023 and 2024 financial statement for audit. The Executive Secretary, Mr. Mungoshi, informed the committee that the entire experienced delays in receiving government support had only received a fraction of its treasury allocation for 2025, leaving it unable to meet its operational cost and salary obligations, resulting in the accumulation of arrears. Honorable Speaker, Madam, while in while the 2023 and 2024 financial statements had been prepared. They remained pending audit due to funding constraints, and the 2020 audit was still being finalized at the time of committee's inquiry. The committee further noted that Newsiana's financial challenge were compounded by the low business activities, reduced uptake of advertising space, significant staff shortages, which collectively resulted in loss of businesses. While the agents had transactioned from print to digital media, the shift did not yet yield and acceptable financial returns. Honorable Speaker, Madam, coming to committee observations, the inability to afford audit cost affects institution funding model that is structural and unsustainable and requires urgent policy attention. Audit fees constant and predictable requirement in statutory expenditure item. The failure to ring-fence funding for audit costs from allocation budgets indicates a gap in financial planning and treasury oversight of grant conditions. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Hyper-infrastructure condition of do not exist the statutory obligation to submit financial statements. Entities operating in difficult economic conditions requires proactive support mechanisms, not retrospective condemnations. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee recommendation. The Accountant General should, by 31 August 2026, develop a framework for use by Office of the Auditor General to determine SOEs that cannot afford private audit that the Auditor General should audit. This will ensure that ability to pay private auditor fees does not become a justification for non-submission. All SOEs receiving treasury grants must budget and ring-fence funds for audit fees from the grant. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Coming to transactions, complicity, and international financial reporting standard compliance, Honorable Speaker, Madam. In 2014, ZANET was designated by the government of Zimbabwe to acquire 60% shareholding in Telsol Zimbabwe Limited from Vipedcom Netherlands at a cost of US 40 million. As part of the implementation of the indigenization and economic empowerment policy, the financial complexity of this acquisition, which involved multiple government ministries, departments, and agencies, created significant challenges for ZANET in preparation of compliance financial statement. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the involvement of multiple government entities and involved accounting treatment of the TZL shareholdings result in incomplete financial statement that did not meet IFRS requirements. This position was eventually resolved that through an act of statutory instrument 156 of 2023 temporary measures investments laws amendment regulation, which translates the TZL shares to the Mutapa Investments in September 2023. However, this resolution came years after the non-submission had begun, leaving a multi-year gap in ZANET statutory reporting record. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee observations. The dedicated long delay in resolving the ZANET position through legislative intervention SI 156 of 2023 demonstrates a failure of intergovernmental coordination and disregard for the downstream financial reporting consequence of complicity policy transactions. The absence of the specific IFRS technical support mechanism for SOEs that are assigned complicity transactions by government represent a systematic gap in public financial management support framework. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Committee recommendation. The Accounting General should deploy a dedicated IFRS technical advice services accessibility to all SOEs to provide guidance on complicit accounting issues, particularly where complicity government policy transaction created measures and recognition uncertainties. The cost of these services should be done central rather than individual SOEs. Honorable Speaker, Madam. External factors. The committee acknowledges that certain external factors contributed to the reporting delays, particularly that in Kuchene Hospital, the COVID-19 pandemic resulting in reducing working hours and restricted operation flexibility during the period of 2019 to 2021. Exacerbating pre-existing backlogs in the hospital financial reporting and audit processes. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the committee further noted that equally nature of audit process whereby audited financial statement for a subsequent years cannot ordinarily be submitted until preceding years audit has been concluded, created a compounding effect of Inguchene Hospital. The audit firms engaged over the years include PNA, PNA Zimbabwe, and KFN International took prolonged period of finalized audits. In some instances, required adjustment to reports dating as far as 2013, preventing the progress of a subsequent financial year through the audit cycle. These cascading effects ultimately result in the non-submission of financial statement for the year 2022 and 2024 financial year. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Committee observations. The absence of formal reporting mechanism represents a governance gap that allowed Inguchene's backlog to grow unchecked for years. Prolonged duration of audit by successive audit firms of Inguchene Central Hospital with the reports backdated to 2013, still being required years later raise questions about audit quality management, the appropriate of the audit firms, engagement teams, and adequate of oversight by the Auditor General's Office over the quality and the timelines of private sector auditors, including conducting public entity audits. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee recommendation: the PFMA should be amended or subsequently legislation should be enacted to provide a formal mechanism through which SOS and MDAs may apply for extension of statutory reporting deadline in defined circumstances of genuine external disruption. Such application must access determined by the accounting officer, accountant general, with a copy provided to relevant public accounts committee. The extension must not be granted retrogressive. Honorable Speaker, Madam. The Auditor General must establish a performance monitoring framework for private sectors, audit firms conducting public entity audits under the Auditor General's mandate, including enforcement timelines for the delivery of audit reports, accelerating procedures when those timelines are not met. Honorable Speaker, Madam, 4.5, corrective measures and current compliance progress. In response to the committee inquiry, several state-owned enterprises provided accounts of corrective measures taken since the non-compliance was formally identified. The committee acknowledges this initiative as corrective first step, while noting that the credibility of reported progress be verified through independent confirmation by the Auditor General. Committee observations, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The corrective measures reported by most institutions reflect a genuine, encouraging effort following the committee's engagement. The completion of backlog clearance by the Zimbabwe Youth Council, the active auditing engagement at Inguchen and Zupco are noted. The Zimbabwe Defense Invest commitment to submit all outstanding financial statements for 2019 to 2023 by 31 August 2025 is noted. The corrective measures, while measures are largely reactive response to years of accumulative non-compliance rather than preventing it, the committee notes that absence in most institutions of forward-looking governance framework that would prevent a recurrence non-immediate backlogs has been cleared. Committee recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Madam. Accountant General, within 30 days of the adoption of this report, confirmed the committee the current status of corrective measures at each SOEs, including board composition, financial staffing, and system operations. Honorable Speaker, Madam. Any SOEs that fails to comply with the timelines set in the Treasury minutes without providing written justification to the Accounting General should be referred by the committee to the relevant law enforcement and prosecution authorities for consideration of adoption action under the PFMA is going to be implemented. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, Madam, the non-submission of financial statement by the state-owned enterprises and parastatals for the multiple consecutive financial years represent a serious and systematic failure of public financial accountability in SOEs sectors. In the most extreme cases, the National Handicraft Center and the National Library and Documentation Services, this failure has extended for 13 years, denying Parliament, the public and oversight bodies any meaningful insight into the stewardship of public resources in these institutions. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, Madam.
Thank you. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Maposa that this House considers and adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee on non-compliance with regards to submissions of the financial statements to the Auditor General by some state-owned enterprises and parastatals in the 2024 Auditor General's reports, SC 12 of 2026. Is there any debate? I call upon Honorable Mashishi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the Public Accounts Report. Madam Speaker, Section 299 of the Constitution mandates this Parliament to oversee expenditure of the public funds. The submission of financial statements to the Auditor General is the bedrock of this oversight. It is the primary mechanism through which we as elected representatives and the citizens of Zimbabwe can ascertain how the money is being spent. Madam Speaker, the report tabled by the Public Accounts Committee reveals a dereliction of duty. We are not talking about a single instance of delay. We are talking about a systematic collapse of accountability. Madam Speaker, the evidence is damning. Madam Speaker, we can see there's institutionalized negligence. We have entities like the National Handicraft Center and the National Libraries and Documentation Center that have not submitted accounts for an incredible 13 years. This is not a lapse, it is a decade-long period of operation in a black hole of financial transparency. Madam Speaker, we see a culture of impunity the committee has identified a pattern of non-compliance from 2022 onwards involving hospitals, utility companies, and regulatory bodies like the Nurses Council. This demonstrates that these entities feel they can ignore the law with impunity. This cannot be allowed to continue, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it said that the report identifies principal categories of failure, but when we peel back the layers, we see a singular root cause. A profound disregard for the principles of public financial management. We hear excuses like we don't have enough staff. We hear issues like our system crashed. Like Chitungwiza Hospital, the SAP failure exposed a catastrophic lack of basic internal controls, such as data backups. We hear so many issues around these councils, yet they report system failures. To some extent, we fail to believe their submissions. It could be a channel that councils use to evade principles of public finance management. Madam Speaker, how can we condemn the National Handicraft Center when its financial statements, its financial records for a decade were lost due to a computer crash with no backup? Why was there a no central government cloud storage mandated? This is a failure of state infrastructure and the police. Madam Speaker, we have Newsiana, a state agent tasked with telling the nation's story, its story, unable to submit accounts because it cannot afford to pay its own staff, let alone an audit firm. The treasury is late with its allocations, and then the entity is condemned for not being able to afford a statutory audit. This is a secular logic of failure. The Constitution does not provide for a get out of jail free card when the economic environment is tough. The conduct of these entities is a direct assault on the principles of accountability. As Parliament, we are denied an oversight function. It denies the Auditor General the ability to conduct their work. And it denies the people their fundamental right to know how the resources are being managed. Madam Speaker, the argument about a lack of funding for auditors is a straw man. If an entity cannot afford a private firm, it is the Auditor General's office that is mandated to step in. The entity's duty is to prepare the statements. The Auditor General's duty is to audit them. The failure of the entity to even prepare statements is the primary crime here, Madam Speaker. At the Zimbabwe Council, at the Zimbabwe Youth Council, they had only 3 finance staff to cover the 10 provinces. But whose responsibility is it to fill the other 10 positions? It is the entity's leadership, supported by the Public Service Commission, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore call on this House to condemn these failures and demand the immediate and full implementation of the committee's recommendations. Madam Speaker, accountability is not negotiable. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Maswishi. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Maposa that this House considers and adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee on non-compliance with regards to submission of the financial statement to the Auditor General by some state honored enterprises and parastatals in the 2024 Audit General Reports, SC 12/2026. Is there any debate?
I move the
Point of
vote
order,
in
Madam
my
Chair.
name.
Sorry, honorable members, is there any debate?
It's a point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, ndandikumbirawo Madam Chair kuti ma-committee chairs paanoita give notice kuti on Thursday I will issue a notice to give a report at third quarter kana whatever report yavanenge wanayo. Ndaikumbira kuti ipapo daro vabva vatotumira a PDF kana soft copy yacho. Tinoreceive soft copy mugrupu rakanzi 10th Parliament. And the report tikuverenga muno yepublic accounts titoiona izvizvi. Saka inenge yaganga report yecommit than kuti ite report yehouse yose. So ndaikukumbira kuti in future Madam Chair kuti tipedzerane kuti tikwanise kuzodhibhetawo regai tipuwe zvinenguva tikwanise kutaurawo zvitikwanisa kutaura. Ndatenda. Thank you.
Noted, honorable. I put the question that the motion be adopted. Those okay, is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
I call upon Honorable Chief Whip.
Madam Speaker, I move that the debate do now adjourn.
I second, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Moyo. I put the question that the motion be adopted. Those who are of that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, honorable members. Okay. It's good night. Sorry, honorable members. I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what date, Honorable Chief Whip?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker.
I called upon Honorable Chief Whip.
Speaker, ma'am, I move that we proceed to order number 22 on today's order paper.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Notice of motion number 22, Honorable Maposa.
I move the motion in my name.
Okay, who seconds? Who seconds, honorable members?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Honorable. I now call upon Honorable Mateo.
Honorable Maposa, thank you so much.
Maposa, sorry.
Yes, that's okay. Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker, Madam.
Afternoon, Honorable.
Yes, I stand in Public Accounts Committee on a non-submission of financial statement by local authorities to the Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, Madam, I goes to introduction. The Public Accounts Committee drives its oversight mandate from Section 299 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which empowers Parliament to monitor and oversee the state expenditure to ensure that all public funds are properly accounted for and applied in accordance with the law. In addition, Section 49(1)(c) and Section 35 of 6 of the Public Financial Management Act, Chapter 2219, requires ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, to prepare and submit financial statement within 60 days of the end of each financial year for audit by Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, Madam, despite this clear statutory provision, a number of local authorities have considered failure to meet the prepared deadline. Notable Pura Rural District Council, Karoi Town Council, Bedbridge Municipality, Bedbridge Rural RDC Council, and the Wange Local Board have been cited for delays and non-submission of financial statement for several years. Honorable Speaker, Madam. The committee conducted an inquiry into this matter in order to establish the reasons for such persistence, non-compliance, and to recommend measures to ensure adherence to the legal framework governing financial reporting. Objectives of the inquiry, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The committee sought to assess the level of compliance by the selected local authorities with the statutory provision of the Constitution and the Public Financial Management Act relating to the submission of financial statements. Understand the underlying cause of non-submission and delay, to evaluate the implication of such non-compliance and accountability, transparent and sound public financial management. Make recommendations and aim at improving the timelines and competence of submission of the audit to the Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, methodology. In carrying out its inquiry, the committee examined the Auditor General's report for the financial year ended 31 December 2024, which was tabled in Parliament on 23 July 2025. Oral submissions were received from the accounting officers and the management of the local authorities concerned, namely Fura RDC Council, Karoi Rural District Council, Bedbridge Municipality, Bedbridge District Council, and the Wange Local Board. The Auditor General report in findings, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The Auditor General report reviewed a continued trend of non-submission of financial statement by the several local authorities, Fura RDC, Bedbridge Municipality, and the Rural District Council, Karoi RDC, Wange Local Board, and all failed to submit 2023 and 2024 financial statement for audit. Honorable Speaker, Madam, now going by local authority, I start with Bedbridge RDC. Bedbridge RDC contributed the non-submission of financial statement to acute staffing shortages following the resignation of Council Treasurer in 2023. The subsequent vacancy being filled in August 2024 after 17 months. The Council further explained that during the absence of the substantive Council Treasurer, financial statement of 2021 and 2022 were finalized. Furthermore, it was submitted that the absence of the substantive Treasurer signify undermine the performance of the financial unity, inadequate supervision of staff, and non-compliance with the statutory financial management timelines. To address the shortcomings, the Council had finalized the 2023 and 2024 financial statements, which were submitted to the Office of the Auditor General on 22nd of October 2025. Honorable Speaker, Madam, Committee observations. The committee noted that commendable rejection action by the Beitbridge RDC in addressing the 2023-2024 backlog of submitting financial statement. However, despite the plausible explanation on the absence of the substantive treasure to comply financial statement, the breach of Public Financial Management Act must be taken seriously by the management of Beitbridge RDC. Furthermore, the committee observed that the non-submission of 2023 and 2024 was a result of incapacitation of financial unity in the absence of substantive council treasure in Beitbridge RDC. Recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The committee therefore recommends that going forward, Beitbridge RDC should fully capacitate its financial unity through continuous training, development on annual basis, able to fulfill obligation set in Section 49 of the Public Financial Management Act. Beitbridge Town Council, COVID-19 ICT challenges. The municipality experienced significant financial management challenges, primarily arising from the COVID-19 period of 2020, during which staff rationalization resulted in a substantial backlog in transaction posting. Following the pandemic, limited staff capacity required the simultaneous handling of current transaction, historical backlog, which slow overall progress. These challenges were compounded by persistent system inefficiencies associated with Sage Vision 7, including transaction duplication, processing failure, and inaccurate reporting. This necessitated the upgrade of the ERP system and supporting ICT infrastructure. Although the upgrades were implemented during the acquisition of new hardware and a server, the Council highlighted that transaction challenges such as data migration and system configuration continued to affect system performance. Honorable Speaker, Madam, staff shortages. The Council further explained that its financial department also faced critical staff shortages, which were further acceptable by the staff over 10, including the departure of key personnel such as the finance director. Although additional staff were later recruited, capacity constraints remained, particularly at junior levels, limiting the municipality's ability to clear backlog efficiently. The lack of automation was further cited as one of the reasons several financial processes remained in manual, including cash books updates, bank reconciliation, assets management, which increases the risk of error and inefficiencies. Some ERP modules were not fully operational. System failure, particularly within the voucher management module, disrupted transaction processing. Honorable Speaker, despite these challenges, progress was made. The committee was informed that 2023 financial statements were approximately at 90% complete and were expected to be submitted by 30 November 2025, with the 2024 financial statement conducted to follow in the first quarter of 2026. The progress made was a result of municipality implementation of several corrective measures, including restructuring of financial department, recruiting additional staff, engaging consultant, fit young consultant, and Divine Expense Solutions in partnership with the ZIG. This invasion focused on several ERP system issues. Automation, manual process, enhanced reporting in line with IPSAS standard and strengthen staff capacity. Honorable Speaker, Madam, comment observations. The committee observed that Beitbridge Municipality final managed system was in a state disarray. Although system upgrade and staffing innovation were introduced, transaction issues such as data, immigration challenges, incompetent module functionality, and limited staff capacity, particularly at junior levels, continue to hinder full operation effectiveness. Honorable Speaker, Madam, consequently, while progress has been made in preparation of financial statement, full automatic and timely reporting have not yet been fully achieved. Come the recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Madam, the municipality should prioritize the full establishment of observation and of the upgrading ERP system by completing all
Order,
outstanding
Honorable.
data.
Honorable members on my left side. Allow honorable member to be heard in silence.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Madam. I will take it again. Consequently, while progress has been made in preparation of financial statement, full automation and timely reporting have not yet been fully achieved. Committee recommendation, Honorable Speaker, the municipality should prioritize the full establishment and optimization of the upgraded ERP system, completion all outstanding data migration process, ensuring full activation of all system modules by 31 October 2026. Beitbridge municipality should accelerate the digitization of remaining manual progress such as cash book maintenance, bank reconciliation, assets management to improve accuracy, efficiency and control by 31 October 2026. Coming to Wangeloka Board, Honorable Speaker, Madam, in capacitation of financial director, the council highlighted that 3 challenges compounded its ability to comply with the requirements of the Public Financial Management Act on the submission of financial statement. Backlog in submitting financial statement for 4 years, overwhelmingly the accounts department's capacity to consolidate all the accounts. The aspects of staff shortage within the accounting department was raised at the prime determined, which crippled the council's ability to comply with financial regulations. The finance director explained that the finance director was heavily depleted before 2023, which saw the director being led by accounts clerk. This labor shortage accumulated in the entity failed to timely consolidate its financial statements. Expounding on the current step up to department, the finance director highlighted that the director now had 5 clerks, 3 with degrees and 2 with diplomas, 2 bookkeepers with degrees in finance and accounting accountant with a master's degree in accounting. All these personnel were under the stewardship of the finance director with a master in appliance accounting and CPA qualifications. Honorable Speaker, Madam, enterprise resource planning system challenges. The committee was informed that the absence of the financial enterprise resources planning ERP system result in the council failure to submit financial statements to the Auditor General. The council indicated that a procurement process for a new ERP system was currently at an advanced stage following the inability of initial services provider to meet the required system specifications. The council had initially embarked on the procurement of SAGE, evolution of its preferred ERP solution, transforming from the Proman system, which did not support consolidated financial report. At the time of reporting, Honorable Speaker, the Council was waiting the conclusion of the procurement process for the award of ERP contract, which was expected to address existing system deficiencies and improve financial reporting and compliance. It was further submitted that the ministry recommended for the adoption of the labs system by local authorities had been issued in early 2025. And this was further, the council had already initiated its procurement process for a new ERP system. Honorable Speaker, Madam 4.33, high audit fees by the OAG. It was submitted before the committee that the 2023 audit statement for Wangeloko board would be signed by 31 December 2025, and effort will be made to submit all the outstanding financial statement in 2026. However, despite the renewed commitment to address audit issues, the council beamed the high audit fees charged by the office of the AG, of the Auditor General, with the financial woes. Bedview local authority at the US 20,000 charged by the AG was highlighted as too much, and given the backlog of 3 years and the staggered audit fees were on high margins. Observation: the committee observed that staff challenges severely affect the council's ability to submit financial statement. The committee further demands the significant effort by the local authority to address the staff shortage within the financial department, recruiting adequate staff to run the financial affairs of the council. The committee also council finance report that adverse affected by the absence of full functional enterprise resources planning ERP system, which resulted in delays in the preparation and submission of financial statement to the Auditor General. The continued absence of a functioning ERP placed the Wangeloko board in a precarious position to consolidate its financial accounts. Honorable Speaker, whilst the rendering process has been initiated, it is, however, long overdue. The council ability to achieve efficiency, real-time financial reporting in full compliance with statutory reporting requirements is still several constrained. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the audit fees of 20,000 US charged by the ALG are too high for small local authorities given the limited resources stream in local authorities. The high audit fees were provided to be a contribution factor on non-compliance and delays in finalization of the financial statements. Committee recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Wangeloko board should expedite finalization of ERP procurement processing by 31 July to ensure timely implementation of full functional system compatible of supporting integrated consultation and real-time financial report. The OAG must reduce the standard audit fees for small urban rural authorities, local authorities, rural district council by at least 50% starting from 2026. Coming to full RDC, Honorable Speaker, Madam, ERP challenges, the committee gathered that Fura RDC experienced significant operation challenges during the period under review, primarily rising from system-related disruptions. During the implementation of critical accounting system and associated data migration process, technical failure occurred, resulting in temporary inconsistent in the trial balances. This described the necessitated extension manual verification procedures to confirm the accuracy and integrity of the opening balances for the year under audit. In addition, the committee was informed that a major severe failure further disrupted operations and contributed to delay in the preparation of the financial statement. The time required to prepare and restore severe affected workflow continuity. Staffing challenges, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The organization also faced human resources constrained within the financial department. The department of a key staff member responsible for capturing, preparing income and expenditure records created a temporary skills gap which delays financial reporting process. To mitigate this, management engaged graduate trainees to support ongoing accounting functions while recruiting efforts were indicated to be underway. Despite the challenges, Fura RDC successfully progressed with the audit of its 2023 and 2024 financial statements. The Council initiated measures to strengthen its financial management system, including partially migration to visual platform through a severe provider and the gradual implementation of the Labs Enterprise Resources Planning ERP system. While full computerization has not been achieved, significant progress has been made, particularly in revenue management. Through the implementation of this strategy, Fura RDC informed the committee that external auditors were engaged at the beginning of August, and field work was completed by mid-September. The 2023-24 audit financial statement were to be submitted to the OAG by the end of November 2025. Honorable Speaker, Madam, committee observations. The management of Fura RDC, following its submission on the 2023 and 2024 financial statement, made significant progress in preparation of the outstanding statements. The gradual implementation of LABS system was committable, and through the full computerization was lagging behind. Honorable Speaker, the committee ought to translate in a full digitalization and finalization of the 2023 and 2024 financial statements indicate a commitment to full comply with the provision of the Public Financial Management Act. Furthermore, Honorable Speaker, it was observed that additional measures included to improve audit timeline, including increasing staffing level within the financial department, provide to be effective. However, it is important to fill in all the vacancies within the financial department with permanent staff instead of relying on temporary graduate traineeship. Honorable Speaker, committee recommendations. Fura RDC must fill all the posts within its financial department with permanent employees by the end of third quarter of 2026. Fura RDC should fully digitalize its financial management system by the second quarter of 2026. Coming to Karoi Town Council, Honorable Speaker, ERP system challenges. The committee found out that Karoi Town Council financial management system was in a state of totally disarray. Karoi Town Council accumulated a backlog of five outstanding audits dating backdated to 2019, Honorable Speaker. As no audit existence has been conducted that period up to 2025. Fact table, the report on Karoi Council audited out for 2020, which was in 2023 AGM report or AGM report for local authorities. The other accounts of subsequent year were still not finalized by the council. Responding to the delays in completing audits, the town council largely contributed the delayed operation and systematic challenges obtained by Proman system challenges. While certain financial modules such as receipting, income expenditure, debtors, and reconciliations had been computerized, other critical areas, including the holding and creditors modules, remaining outside the system. As a result, the preparation of financial accounting continued to rely heavily on manual process using spreadsheet, Honorable Speaker, limiting overall efficiency and integration. Honorable Speaker, current conversion challenges in Karoi Town Council. Another major contribution factor to the delay in submitting financial statement was indicated to the introduction of a new currency framework at the end of 2022, which exposed the limited in the council's accounting system. The committee was informed that the existing system was not configured to handle multiple currency transactions, resulting in the converging of United States dollar, USD, and the ZIG transaction, while the issue was manageable in 2022 due to low transaction volumes. The council highlighted that it becomes significantly more complexity in 2023 as transaction volumes increased. To address this, council exploded that the system provider was engaged to configure the system and separate the USD and the ZIG components. Although the system dated were implemented, challenges persisted, particularly in relating to transaction dating and classification across the affected periods. Consequently, manual intervention had been required, with accounting staff undertaking debt layout, segregation, and verification of transactions. Furthermore, in as far as the staff capacity was concerned, the town council reported that the recruitment of 7 graduates trainees in the financial directory voted its resolve towards address the ERP system in phases. The council further committed to submit the 2023 financial statement by 2030, by 30 October 2025, and the 2025 financial statement by 30 November 2025. Committee observation. The committee observes that Karoi Town Council was not taking the law seriously in as far as financial reporting was concerned, despite the committee, which is the party committee, tabling a report on Karoi Town Council finding on the 2023 OAG report on local authorities. The town council had not reformed nor made any meaningful headway in addressing the observation, finding, and recommendation made by the Public Accounts Committee. Non-submission of financial statement still remains in recurring problems despite a promulgated recommendation for adherence on legislative financial reporting. Honorable Speaker, the committee noted that with the concern that the over-remedial manual process of transactions and the gaps in the Proman system were providing to be major challenges contributing to the recurrence of the problem of non-financial statement despite the remedial section done. The seriousness of the town council still remains questionable in as far as adherence to section 49 of the Public Financial Management Act is concerned. Committee recommendation, Honorable Speaker, Madam. The PAC recommends that the Ministry of Local Government and Public Works takes a stern position on the accounting officer and the management of Karoi Town Council following the continual breach of financial reporting legislative by July 31, 2026. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, Madam, the committee is agreed by the portrayed trends of non-submission of audited financial statement by the local authorities. This highlighted 5 local authorities extensively captured in the report shown by the gravity of non-compliance to Section 49 of the PFMA. Although some of the local authorities proved commitment for reform and remedial action, the non-submission of the audited financial statement is a serious issue which must be taken seriously by all local authorities across the country. The committee, however, remains optimistic that the issue captured in this report will be addressed through consequent efforts to implement the solid recommendation. In this regard, committee approves all the stakeholders to take the recommendation made by the seriousness so as to ensure financial prudence and sanity, transparent and efficient in the use of management of public funds by the local authorities. So I submit, Honorable Speaker, Madam.
Thank you, Honorable Maposa. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Maposa that this House considers and adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee on non-submission of financial statement to the Auditor General by some local authorities in the 2024 Audit General Report, SC 14/2026. Is there any debate? I now call upon Honorable Maoneke.
Honorable Mkani, second.
Okay, Honorable, you can go ahead. You were not available, Honorable. You can go ahead.
My apology, Chair. Maita basa mbatu wechigaro. Ndoda kutsigira report ye public accounts. Aturwa mudare rino na Honorable Maposa. Pamusoro pehurumende dzematunhu atingati local authorities. Mashoko angu haana kumbowanda mubati wechigaro. Chokutanga ndechekuti hurumende dzematunhu idzi dzatoti local authorities ndidzo dzinotarisa matunhu edu. Tine homwe inonzi devolution fund, ndiwo vanoona nezvadzo. Zvaizvezvi vari kutora mari dzemitero kubva kumamaini. Mamaini ose ndivo vanoenda vachitora mari idzodzo, tinovaona vachisvika vachinyora mainvoice avo emari dzakati kuti chaizvo. Mamaini akawanda ndivo vanodzibata nekudzishandisa. Vane midziyo inokosha yakafanana nedzimotikari, vane midziyo inokosha yakafanana nevhu yatingati land. Tine mastands akawanda anenge ari mumaoko ehurumende dzematunhu. Izvi zvose izvi ndezvevanhu, zvatingati muchirungu public assets. Ndezvevanhu, ivo vanomiririra vanhu. Zvino ripoti yataurwa naHonorable Maposa, musoro weshoko wenyaya unoti non-submission. Kana todudzira pachivanhu chedu, zvinoreva kusatotaura kuti gore rinei takanga tine ng'ombe dzakati, tikazotengesa dzimwe, tikasenge tawana mari yakati, takatenga mota dzinoti type yakati kwakati, takawana mari yakati, takashandisa yakati. Kungonyarara chete usina chawataura ndio inonzi non-submission. Saka zvinomba zvatishungurudza kuti kureva kuti hapana kana anogona kungonyorawo hake chero zvakazonzi hazvo manyorero amakaita aya handiwo. Kuna anonzi accounting standards anobvumirwa, munonyora muchidai muchidai, zvozotaurwa izvozvo, asi mambobhiringisha maendesa kwa Auditor General kuti izvi ndo zvatakaitawo. Total non-submission kwemakore anototaurika. Zvino ini panondibata zvishoma ipapa, nokuti tinozonzwa nyaya dzokuti takanga tisina vanogona kunyasonyora. Mubati wachigaro ndodzikisa pfungwa kuti kanzuru hakusi kumakombi kunongotorwa hwindi parodhi kuti uya ushedzere. Kanzuru ihurumende inotoadvertisa kuti tiri kudawo vashandi ane 5 O levels, akaitawo accounts. Kana wakaitawo accounts unotoziva chinonzi debit credit chii. Saka zvondinetsa kuti vanhu vashandi vemukanzuru vanopindwa basa sei, vasingagoni kungonyorawo havo nerurimi rweaccounts, accounting language, matransactions, kana totaurawo nerurimi irworwo. Zvondinetsa, asi mubati wechigaro, kana ndotarisa ini ndinoona sekunge isu sehurumende kana kuti bazi rinoona nezvemalocal authority riri kuti sarirei kumasure pakutarisa ziso remakanzuru aya kuti vari kumbozvifambisa sei zvinhu zvavo, nekuti hatingati isusu tinoverenga makore anosvika 5 pamwe 10 pasina ko Ministry of Local Government. Maonero angu ini nemazvisisiro angu ndokuti ndivo vane ziso rinotarisa makanzuru. Havanawo here rimwe department rinoti gore negore rinombotendererawo mumakanzuru vachiti tionei mabhuku enyu. Ko apa muri kuzvifambisa sei? Makaendesa here ma-financial statements? Kwete kuti makaodhitwa here, kungoendesa. Hapanawo here anovhunza izvozvo. Ndopa chikumbiro kuministry yelocal government. Hatisi kuda sedare rino kuti tirambe tichingoti makanzuru takanga timbori kubhuruwa yoko. Wainzwa nyaya yekuti 13 years, 19 years makambani ekanzuru achiopareta hanyori kana kuti takaita profiti, takaita chii, zvakangonyararwa. Ndinokumbirisa, ndinodzokorodza kuti ndinokumbirisa kuti ministry yelocal government ngaiise department kana raarisipo rinoona nezvemakanzuru, nokuti rimwe zuva tichazokumbira vanoona nezvebazi iri minister kuti minister imbotitaurirai kuti makanzuru ari kushanda sei. Saka ndinotarisira kuti nyaya idzi dzinofanira kusvika kumagumo. Kune inonzi ERRP, zvazvirungu izvi. Zvinezvi zvichingoreva kuti isystem iri mukombiyuta, ikombiyuta yekuti mari yakapinda unongojunga kuti kwauya mari yakati yabva kumaresi. Iyo yobva yakanda mudebit, yobva yakanda mukredit, yobva yaendesa nekutrial balance, kureva kuti mafinancial statements ari kutogadzirika nesystem iyoyi. Asi ERRP yacho inongotaurwa kuti titi saka mafinancial statements haabudi neiko. Chinzwai kudhura kweERRP yacho inenge ichitaurwa mazimari kuti takaitenga system iyoyi mazimari akati. Saka tinokumbirisa kumalocal authorities kugadziriswe zvaizvezvi maita basa mubati wechigaro.
Thank you, Honorable Kani. I now call Honorable Chief Whip.
Madam Speaker, I move that the debate will now adjourn.
I second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Moyo. I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what date, Honorable Chief
To
Whip?
tomorrow, Madam Speaker.
Thank you,
Madam
Honorable
Speaker,
Chief Whip.
I move that we stand over all other items until orders number 50, 51, 53, 54, and 55 are disposed of in that order. I thank you.
I second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Moyo. The clerk will read the fifth order of the day.
Adjourned debate on motion on the report of the Joint Portfolio Committee on Tourism and Hospitality Industry and the Thematic Committee on Culture and Heritage on the state of cultural and heritage sites as it relates to Zimbabwe's tourism sector.
When this debate was adjourned on the 24 March 2026, the question before the House was a motion by Honorable Mamumbe that this House considers and adopts the report of the Joint Portfolio Committee on Tourism and Hospitality Industry and Thematic Committee on Culture and Heritage on the state of cultural and heritage site as it relates to Zimbabwe tourism sector, SC 6/2026. I call upon Honorable Mamumbe.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to conclude and wind up debate on this Portfolio Committee report. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I rise to sincerely thank all the honorable members who contributed to this Portfolio Committee report and the Thematic Committee. I wish to say that, Madam Speaker, I'm grateful for the insightful submissions, the constructive observations, and also the overwhelming support to this debate, Madam Speaker, ma'am. What we have noted is that Zimbabwe is a crucial cog for maintaining the national identity, fostering cultural diversity, and also driving tourism growth by promoting economic development at large through making sure that we preserve our heritage and cultural monumental sites. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the vital role that is played by the tourism sector is well articulated in the National Development Strategy, NDS1, and hence it's the link to the national heritage and cultural sites dotted across the country that cannot be emphasized. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all the honorable members who debated, and I have taken note of the valuable recommendations made during the debate, and I trust that this will strengthen the implementation of the resolutions that were contained in our report. Before I sit down, let me thank the Portfolio Committee members that were led by Honorable Mrombedzi and also the chairperson of the Thematic Committee on Culture and Heritage, who went around the country and also coming up with this report. Madam Speaker, I now move that the House adopt this Portfolio and Thematic Committee report. I so submit. Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Mamumbe. I put the question that the motion be adopted. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the motion is adopted.